Our main character's name is Lee DM. He's a martial arts master. But he's suffering from leukemia, which is slowly killing him. However, since he received a ticket to travel through different worlds, not only was his illness completely cured, but he can also increase his strength exponentially, just by completing the assigned tasks. In the world he travels to, he immediately gets DM Fu points to exchange for precious items that are not available anywhere else. Like going to the world of One Piece to learn Conqueror's Haki, or to another world to fight demons. Each new world is a new journey. Only his strength grows stronger after each return from another world. And without further ado, let's begin. The story begins in a bustling market. Inside a CD rental shop. On the desk, a young man is sleeping soundly, when suddenly two figures walk in. The young man wakes up and sees a beautiful young woman. The young woman smiles and asks, "Excuse me, are you Lee DM?" He coldly replies, "Yes. I am the manager of the Chinese Martial Arts Association. From Guangdong I am. Loi Tin Loi Hong Sin is my grandfather. In terms of seniority, I should call you senior brother." Lee DM hurriedly stood up and invited them to sit down. "This place is a bit small. Don't laugh." Loi Tin shook her head. "Not at all." Lee DM turned around and took out a thermos of hot water. While making tea, he said, "Let me pour you two some tea. Is your grandfather still in good health?" Loi Tin, with her eyes lowered, said, "He passed away last year." Lee DM suddenly fell silent for a moment. The tea overflowed from the cup. "This time I'm here to hope that senior brother Lee can come with me to Guangdong to take on the position of advisor to the Martial Arts Association. I am what kind of person I'm sure Miss Loi has heard. To put it bluntly, I know myself and others in the martial arts world. The name Lee DM can be said to be infamous. Why do you think I can help you? Notorious is more accurate than infamous. Maybe those people don't respect you, senior brother. But they will definitely fear you. That makes sense. It's just a pity you're late. Miss Loi is an educated person. I was recently diagnosed with acute leukemia. I'm sure you know what a terminal illness is. So I'm afraid I can't help you. I may have put you in a difficult position by coming here this time. But the association is my grandfather's life's work. I can't bear to watch it become a tool for abuse of power, or for the benefit of some politicians." Lee DM replied, "I hate abuse of power the most. I also can't tell the difference between you and those politicians. In short, with my illness, I really don't have the energy to help you. Thank you for your kindness. If you two want to stay for a meal, I'll boil some dumplings. If not, please leave. And also, light an incense stick for him in my place. My grandfather always thought highly of you from the beginning. Do you know how he assessed you? A martial artist must cultivate 3 parts of malice in their heart. He's met so many juniors in his life. Only that kid, no more, no less, cultivated all 3 parts of malice." She then handed him a business card and continued, "Whether you accept my request or not, I sincerely hope that the 3 parts of malice in your heart haven't faded." After finishing her sentence, she left with the driver. Lee DM stayed behind with the 2 cups of tea. Suddenly, Lee DM burst into laughter. "Ha, 3 parts of malice, 3 parts of malice. What a formidable girl. That's it for today, I'm closing up shop." As he was about to close the shop, someone suddenly stopped him. The person's face was horrifying, as if he was no longer human, like a zombie. Lee DM immediately recognized that this zombie was the driver from earlier. Before he could react, it suddenly kicked him hard, sending him flying back. He fell to the ground. It didn't let him get up and immediately rushed to stomp on him. He caught its foot and broke its knee. He then pulled it down and twisted its arm behind its back, breaking it. After breaking both arms and legs of the zombie, Lee DM stood up and shook his wrist coolly. "Where did I throw my phone just now?" The zombie still didn't give up. Taking advantage of him turning around, it attacked. With his 35 episodes of martial arts experience, his eyes were like a 360 camera. He spun around and kicked, sending the zombie's head spinning. Now it was officially dead. Suddenly, Lee DM's whole body shook. His head was spinning. He was swaying. What is this? Leukemia. No way, am I dying? At this moment, the doctor's words echoed in his head. Simply put, he has leukemia if he wants treatment. Suddenly, a strange memory appeared, confusing him. Then, images he had never seen before appeared clearly in his mind. He saw a person with 3 pairs of wings, bound by purple chains. The person's eyes suddenly opened and looked at him. He was startled awake. Behind him, another guy appeared, clapping his hands. He smiled a Joker's smile and said, "Fascinating, truly fascinating. A simple demonstration of conversation. Focus on maintaining momentum. Once you gain the upper hand, the opponent basically can't turn the tables. I didn't expect such an extremely dangerous move. Like white horse flips over the board. To turn defeat into victory. People say that the Li family in Hajong has 2 unparalleled swords. And their grappling skills are also extremely sharp." Li Diam glared at the guy and said, "Where's the girl who was just here?" He pointed in the other direction. He realized that the zombie was gone. "I have nothing to do with the man and woman from earlier. The only thing we have in common is that we're both very interested in you. Don't worry, I'm just borrowing a thought from that kneeling guy to get your attention. Those two have no idea about this. Let me introduce myself. My name is what was it again? Anyway, you can just call me Vong Duong. But you can also call me by my other name." Fatty San revealed the business card with a very eerie smile and said, "Ah." Li Diam didn't care. "What kind of cake? Why not have dumplings?" Fatty San laughed heartily. "Ha ha ha. This guy is really interesting. I can save your life. But not by donating bone marrow like you think. That's too simple. I can give you something better. If you want to know what I'm going to do, just try it. But this is a path of no return." Li Diam said with a cold look. "Sounds better then. Waiting to die, tell me more." Fatty San laughed even louder as he spoke. "Well then, come here." As he finished his words, behind him, a deep, pitch-black abyss appeared, creating a powerful wave that swallowed Li Diam whole. Welcome to the world of the underworld. In another place, Li Diam felt like he was in a black freefall, engulfing him. Countless strange and bizarre things appeared before his eyes. Inconceivable scenes. Black chains stretched across the horizon. Hundreds of thousands of kilograms of bronze poured down majestically. Red and gold albatross halls danced on the horizon. Pitch black. In the dark clouds, purple and blue lust swirled with thick, intense lightning. Inside the hall were countless gigantic and mysterious shadows. Extremely hot crimson blood followed Li Diam. Bright red. In his vision, he could clearly see the gigantic and mysterious shadows inside. 18 long and short wings touched each other. 9 skulls looked fierce and monstrous. A bloody ancient beat awakened him and played. Li Diam couldn't make a sound. He could only scream in his heart. "Who are you? What are you doing?" Li Diam opened his eyes. When his eyes opened, he saw a row of white spotlights. The surrounding cheers and the smell of cigarettes made his head ache. He rubbed his face and sat up, looking around. Li Diam was now sitting by the wall, facing a 5 square meters boxing ring. To his left were, high and low, no less than a few hundred seats packed with people. At this hour, they were all facing the rain, cheering at the top of their lungs. Li Diam muttered to himself, "This is black boxing. Where's that fat guy?" But at this moment, a hoarse, deep and extremely clear voice entered his ears. "Lord Li Diam. Welcome to the underworld. We've prepared a new identity for you that won't arouse suspicion from others. Just go and cause a scene. Mission details. Time: 1986. Ad location: Kowloon Walled City. The requirements for this underworld event are as follows. 1. Defeat 7 martial arts masters at the Kowloon boxing ring. 2. Obtain any fragment of the Ancient Novel Research Guide. Ancient Novel Research Guide. 3. Awaken the Harvesting Bird and the Ancient Novel Research Guide. Mission explanation. Upon completing any one of the tasks, the underworld event will officially begin. Your stay is 1 month. Note: if you fail, The progress of the current underworld event will be reset. And you will be returned immediately. Notes. Reward. Gain access to purchase items beyond the specified level. Character attributes. Lead DM status. Healthy, dizzy, bleeding. Ancient martial arts talent. 81% out of 100%. Talent ancient martial arts talent. 81% out of 100%. What? Does that mean there's still room for improvement? As Lee DM was thinking, a hand reached out and struck at his head. Lee DM caught his hand and was about to exert force when he heard a shout. What are you standing there like a zombie for? Get in the ring and fight, you idiot. Lee DM quickly lowered his head and let go of his hand, using his remaining eye to glance at the wall. As expected, only messy water stains remained. Not a single word could be seen. That person had seen Lee DM's murderous look and was scared out of his wits. Seeing Lee DM lower his head, he quickly regained his arrogance, adjusting his suit and muttering, "Hurry up and get up here." Lee DM silently walked towards the ring, but his heart was pounding. If he could really bring him to Hong Kong in 1986, then there was no reason why he couldn't cure his illness. On the stage, the host held a microphone and shouted in an exaggerated tone, trying to hype up the atmosphere. Next up, we have the most heavily bet on fighter tonight. He's very powerful. It's safe to say that he'll be fighting tonight, after defeating 6 boxers in a row. As Lee DM was about to step into the ring, the host suddenly rushed over and said, "Get down. It's not your turn yet. Who do you think you are? Step aside." He turned around and saw a few people also standing below, waiting to enter the ring at this moment. Shouts of "Cha Si" erupted from the ring. Cha Si on the stage was a young man with well-defined muscles. He had a confident look on his face, as if he could sense Lee DM's gaze. Cha Si tilted his head and looked straight down at the stage. Lee DM and Cha Si locked eyes for a moment. Finally, he chose Lee DM to fight one-on-one. Lee DM observed the man on stage. It was as if a red light was emanating from him. As soon as Lee DM stepped into the ring, he analyzed like Conan. This guy, Cha Si, is from the Dong Nai province in southern Vietnam. He trained in Muay Thai and is known as the Muay Thai prodigy, the Southern Buddha Fist King. He has been practicing Muay Thai for 25 years and has countless victories under his belt. If he didn't have enough skill and power, Cha Si wouldn't dare to be so arrogant in the Kowloon arena. In Kowloon, the first few matches are just to warm up against some weaklings. The last few matches are the ones to watch. Cha Si immediately launched a very basic attack. Lee DM easily dodged to the side, smooth as silk. He then pushed his opponent's hand away, aimed a punch at his chin. The opponent was also quick with his hands and feet, dodging Lee DM's punch. But he was caught off guard and lost his balance. Lee DM immediately punished him with a knee strike, forcing his opponent to kneel. Please give the admin a like, dear viewers. In the audience, a man wearing a gold necklace with a tattoo on his chest looked very stylish. He was muttering to himself. 8 trigrams palm. Cha Si stood up with a grim face and stretched. He raised his fist towards Lee DM with his right foot forward. My turn. This time, it was Lee DM's turn to charge forward, throwing the right hook at Cha Si's cheek. Cha Si blocked with his arms and took the opportunity to knee Lee DM. But Lee DM read his opponent's mind like a book and headbutted his opponent's knee, shattering his bones. Cha Si lost his balance and fell to the ground, screaming, "You bastard." Lee DM glanced at the host and said, "Announce it." The host was shocked. He looked at Cha Si lying on the ground with difficulty and swallowed hard before stammering, "The winner of this boxing match is Lee DM." The people who had bet on Cha Si were so frustrated they wanted to jump off a bridge. That useless Cha Si. Is there something wrong with him, damn it? We lost so badly this time, how are we going to survive? Maybe I should sell my YouTube channel and double down somewhere else. On the stage, Lee DM raised his hand with an impassive face. Isn't there another round? What's next? Cha Si lost. Who am I fighting next? The stylish guy in the audience laughed heartily. Haha, kid. In this Kowloon boxing match, someone has to bet on you to win. Just now, someone bet on Cha Sai to win. That's why you were able to fight. If no one bets on you to win, you can only get off the stage. Those useless guys are clearly not strong enough for you. How about fighting one of my men? Win or lose, this 50,000 is yours. In the 80s, 50,000 was probably a huge sum. But I can only stay here for a month. I can't take it all with me suddenly. An information panel popped up. Item exchange. 50,000 yuan type. Valuable item. Quality. Excellent note. Can be exchanged for 5 DM fu points. This item requires your confirmation of usage rights before it can be exchanged. Seeing that he could exchange it for DM fu points, Li DM immediately agreed. Alright, I'm in. I agree to bet on the boxers here. Just pick anyone and I'll arrange it. But letting your own man fight is against the rules. Fatty, are you brain dead? You want me to spend 50,000 to watch those trash fight? Do you think I'm crazy? Don't say another word. I'm just letting my man have some fun. I'll pay the full amount. Commissioner. Are there any rules against outsiders fighting? No. While I'm still in a good mood. Get the hell out of here. As soon as he was kicked away, he immediately ran to Li DM and said, that guy in the white suit is a very powerful person. Beat him good. And then knock those guys down a few more times. And you'll get 50,000. Take it and go. Got it? Li DM glared. Got it. Li DM's expression was calm. Despite his high fever, bleeding, and infection. These were all complications of leukemia. Li DM's physical condition was extremely weak. But he felt a rush from this fight. This is what it means to be alive. The stylish guy in the audience smirked. Hee hee, Xiao Chu. I know you've been waiting for this. Go up there and play with this 8 trigrams palm master. Xiao Chu wasn't someone who practiced those low-level martial arts, like Wing Chun or whatever. He learned from. He was qualified to open a martial arts school and teach disciples. At any Chinese martial arts school, Xiao Chu had been training with an 8 trigrams palm master from a young age. He suffered a setback. 5 of his tendons and bones were broken. And his right ear was deafened. So for many years, he had been hoping to see the successor of the 8 trigrams palm strike again. To take revenge, he never expected to meet one today. Duel, the successor of the Du family's boxing style. Li Diam glanced at him. Li Diam from Hajong. Xiao Chu, unable to recognize him, frowned. His eyes were filled with anger as he rushed forward. Xiao Chu's legs and arms moved like waves, swift and silent. Eye gouging kicks, groin kicks, everything. Every strike involved both his hands and feet. Li Diam was no pushover either, and was able to block them all. Suddenly, Xiao Chu withdrew his strength and threw a punch with his other hand, catching Li Diam by surprise. Such a sudden attack. But Li Diam still managed to block it. Xiao Chu couldn't help but be surprised. This Du family's boxing style is quite interesting. At this moment, Li Diam finally realized that he had underestimated the experts in Kowloon walled city. On the stage, Xiao Chu coldly stared at Li Diameter and slowly said, "You're very arrogant. I never thought that a thug from the Laotian gang would be a master of the Du family's boxing style. I guess I have to get serious now." As soon as he finished his words, Li Diam charged forward. The two were about to engage in a fierce exchange of blows. But at this moment, a clear voice rang out. "Stop." These words immediately attracted everyone's attention. In the arena, a group of people appeared at the entrance of the hall. About 30 of them, with serious expressions. The leader was a young man with red hair, who looked like a Korean idol. His name was Hong Gue. Wasam walked towards a seat and said softly, "Hong Gue, you scared me." "What? Did that old ghost Wu from your commission lose face? We, Lin Shang, came to Kowloon to watch a fight, and we were kicked out." "What's going on?" Hong Gue walked over to Wasam and sat down next to him. lighting a cigarette and saying in a muffled voice. The feud between Mr. Wu and Lin Shang has nothing to do with us, who rely on our fists to make a living. We are Tai Sui. But do you think our arena is a chicken coop? Anyone can just come and go as they please. Come and go. Aren't you breaking our rules? Let me be frank. My Xiao Chu wants to find an 8 trigrams palm master to fight. He's been looking for a long time. I don't want to break the rules of Kowloon. I just want my man to have a match with your boxer. That's all. If you can't even agree to this small request, then you're not giving me face. Rules are rules. I don't care about anything else. But today, your man coming up here is causing trouble in Kowloon. Wasam was so angry he laughed. All right. Stop talking. Xiao Chu jumped down from the stage, called Wasam back, and said to Hong Gue, "You mean, as long as I follow the rules and fight on the stage, I can fight him? Then you have to start from the first round. If the commission accepts your results, and someone bets on you, of course, no problem." Xiao Chu walked over to Wasam and nudged his throat. Wasam glanced at him. What, does a boss not know how to take care of his little brother? Forget it, do as you please. Wasam stood up and left with his men. Before leaving, Xiao Chu bowed to Li Diam. Master Li, not many people fight with traditional martial arts on the Kowloon walled city arena. I'm not in the mood today. When I establish myself in the Kowloon arena, we'll have a proper fight. Li Diam nodded and said, Master Chu, is the 50,000 yuan that your Wasam mentioned still valid? Xiao Chu was stunned for a moment. After a while, he nodded with a strange expression. Yes. Li Diam sat in the audience as images flashed before his eyes. You have received 5 Diam Fu points. In this underworld event, you have unlocked the purchase limit override. Your purchase limit override options are as follows. A glimpse of brilliance. Skill type. Inside quality. Normal. Description. Can obtain personal information about another person. Provide some insight into their strengths and weaknesses. You can directly use the skills function. Each time you obtain personal information about another person, it will consume 1 Diam Fu point. You can also choose to spend 10 Diam Fu points to purchase this skill after purchasing. You can use this skill freely. Diam Fu points. 10. Enhanced blood cell generator. Item type. Consumable quality. Excellent. Origin. Daibin Research Institute. China. Description. It has a strong therapeutic effect on the destruction of body mechanisms caused by blood and blood cell diseases. It can also enhance the vitality of the user's blood. For the user, normal people will experience a slight increase in skill proficiency and blood flow after use. Blood flow enhancement pill. Although it cannot cure your illness, it will prevent you from getting hurt. Diam Fu points. 5. The next item caught Li Diam's attention. Complete blood cell regeneration pill. Item type. Consumable quality. Rare origin. Daibin Research Institute. China. Description. It has a strong therapeutic effect on blood and blood cell diseases. Blood and blood cell diseases. It can also enhance the vitality of the user's blood. For the user, normal people can master the blood flow enhancement skill after use. Diam Fu points. 300. Note. The purchase limit override you received as a gift can only be used once during an underworld event. After 3 underworld events, the gift will disappear. Damn, as a newbie, I feel like I'm being treated too well. This is what that fat guy promised. Something that can cure my illness. I don't have much time to wait for what? 3 underworld events. I have to get enough Diam Fu points here, which means making money. This is my new home. And my manager is pretty good, too. Hong Gue. Recalling his conversation with Hong Gue. Kowloon walled city is a notorious no man's land. No one governs it every year. Countless wanted criminals with nowhere else to go come here. Some become henchmen, but most of them end up in the Kowloon walled city arena. Like you. But in Kowloon walled city. Without the commission's permission. No one dares to act recklessly, the commission's word is law. No gang dares to say no here. Even the king of heaven is no match for the commission. Understand, you're fighting in Kowloon. You're working for Tai Sui. Tai Sui is the commission's enforcer. In charge of Kowloon. All the big and small businesses in the arena in Kowloon are backed by Tai Sui. I've heard about you. You were very impressive today. You defeated Cha Sai right off the bat. From now on, you'll fight under me. I won't let you lose out on money or women. But if you try anything funny with those cat-eared girls, I'll have Officer Kong arrest you. Wednesday. Those slightly higher rings. How much money can you get? The fourth ring, small arena. You can get 5,000 yuan for winning a fight. You also get 1,000 yuan for losing. The first 5 rings will open only if someone buys you into the ring. Then you can make money. The 6th ring does not open every day. There aren't many boxers. Maybe 3 or 4 times a week. A winning boxer can get 30,000. Losing gets you 5,000. If there are customers who collapse, you can add money to bet on a dwarf. Armed combat. Anything goes. You can earn tens of thousands in one night. But people often die. At this time, Li Yan reached into his pocket. Only a few coins left. Collect enough 300 charm points in 1 month. That would take 3 million. Should I rob a bank? Meow 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 meow. Li Yan bowed his head. He saw a notorious ginger cat approaching, along with a little girl who ran up and picked up the orange cat. Li Yan smiled. Your cat is so cute. Little sister, do you know where room 413 is? The little girl nodded upon hearing that. Hugging the cat, she signaled to Li Yan. Follow me. It took about a minute or two for the little girl to stop, pointing to the number on the roof next to him. It's here. Li Yan took out 2 coins. Like before, he gave it to the little girl. Thank you, little sister. Then I'll give you this copper candy. That house. The voice of Atu's wife came from inside the door. It's so late, are you still talking to I? No, Mom, I'm going downstairs to find America. The little girl quickly ran into the house. Li Yan didn't think much of it. He took out his key and opened his room. Opposite the door was a mother and daughter. Anyway, it's better than the troublemaker Oh Nyen Nyen. Oh Nyen Nyen. At least for now. Li Yan didn't want to cause any more trouble. Late at night, a family discusses inside. The gambler's lips trembled. He took out a flat wooden box from his pocket. How much is this worth? The wooden box opened. Inside was a pale yellow sheet of tissue paper. The gold leaf was intertwined with patterns. Drawing something. It looked very strange. The middle-aged man was immediately dragged outside. Beaten to a pulp. Taking a box of hell money and wanting to exchange it for real money. Damn it, you want to visit someone's grave with hell money? If you don't have money, get out of here. Don't be silly. Don't be silly. Don't come back, or I'll beat you up every time I see you. This is really an antique. At this time, a shadow appeared. Right behind the middle-aged man. He was holding a stone. And smashed it into the back of the middle-aged man's head, causing him to fall flat on his face. The dark shadow grabbed the piece of paper inside the box. Then smiled brightly. The middle-aged man, covered in blood, moaned. Help me, help. But the shadow had no intention of letting him go. He continued to pick up the stone and send him to the board. The scene suddenly shifts to Li Yan's place. Li Yan's chief dressed down. The electricity hit the opponent in the face, knocking him unconscious. The audience also spoke up. This kid is really strong. Winning 5 games in a row in one night. What the hell? This guy. It's clear that he's not just at the level of the 4th reign. Let him fight. Red Devil, do you want me? Red Devil laughed bitterly. You keep fighting like this. Even a fool would know that you're brainless to fight him. You want to bankrupt me. Follow me to the final match today, go to the big arena and fight. Li Yan was a little excited. Big yard, where can I make money? Red Devil threw the cigarette on the ground and said, fuck me a building. Red Devil said, fuck me a building is the same. In Long Tan Street. It's a big, majestic building. As he walked, Red Devil said to Li Yan. You go to fuck me a building to see if you have the right. Extremely rich. One night's expenses are at least hundreds of thousands. The boxers here are very profitable. You want to stand firm here. You have to find a big sponsor to support you. I'll get in touch with you about this later. Just don't tell me you're wrong. Moments later. Red Devil and Li Yan entered a super VIP room. A super nice girl is inside. Red Devil. This damn guy finally showed up. Haven't seen him all night. Did you know I was coming to Longchang and deliberately avoided me? 2 to TI. Don't be angry. Anger will cause wrinkles. I'm not here to find a new brother. Li Yan reluctantly walked towards the woman. She gave a smile to 2 to TI. Tuda looked Li Yan up and down. Thin cheekbones. Protruding cheekbones and chin outline a beautiful woman. A sword flashed. Calm eyes. Tuda took a sip of golden fluid. Lips getting redder and redder. Not bad looking. I wonder if you can stand it, sis. I like handsome guys. But just a few rounds on stage. And got beaten up. Where should I put my face? Or should a Hong beat you up on stage for how much money? I'll take it from you. Li Yan bowed his head and chuckled. Tuda is joking. Red Devil is my boss. How can you let my boss go boxing like that? I might as well jump into the sea. The woman laughed so hard that she shook. If you can stand firm, I will definitely love you. A moment later, somewhere near the rain. The devil patted Li Yan on the shoulder. Don't tell me I don't care about you. The opponent is the big sponsor of Longtan Arena. Her ex-husband was Tai Bin Then Si. Worth hundreds of billions. If you have a big connection like her, you're definitely on your way. You win this match today. It's standing on the 6th reign. Majestic Red Devil. I haven't recruited new blood in a long time. Don't embarrass me. Majestic is one thing. But losing face is definitely not. As long as you don't make me sell myself, I'll fight for you. 3 million is a small matter. You have hundreds of billions yourself. At this moment, the woman was holding a tall glass in her hand, revealing a section of white. Li Yan frowned at her wrist. Li Yan entered the rain. He turned his hand a few times to start the engine. His opponent, dressed in martial arts uniform, was named Tan Ho Nam. He is a wanted serial killer in Tokyo. Proficient in firearms and daggers. At the same time, he also possesses Okinawa's soft and hard karate. He also won 3 matches in a row tonight. 3 opponents had their arm bones broken by him. Kidney rupture. Coma and death in the rain. As the white towel fell to the ground, Li Yan almost immediately rushed forward with his right hand. Like lightning striking out. Honam's head was no less quick. He shook his head and dodged. Then he grabbed Li Yan's hand and used his familiar ultimate move. Seeing Tan Honam grab Li Yan's shoulder, the stand suddenly erupted in a heavy sigh. A sigh. Tudu remembered the victims who were caught by Honam. She was also worried about the handsome man. But Li Yan is not a fool. Li Yan's right foot suddenly shot up into the air. The toe of his shoe kicked Tan Honam hard under the chin. The kick sent Tan Honam's neck back. A mouthful of blood sprayed out into the air. His right hand also fell limp. Red Devil, standing below, couldn't help but exclaim. This kid Li Yan is so cruel. I heard that he lived a good life in Guangdong these past few years. He seems to know a lot about southern martial arts. He's very different from other boxers his age. In the south, it's the legacy of the Bakhak sect from Namkayan. Today, I will make you say goodbye to your ancestors. Li Yan cupped his fingers around Tan Honam's wrist and twisted his wrist outwards. The 3 fingers of his left hand closed, forming a bird's beak shape and stabbing at his armpit. Tan Honam was also considered to have gone through 100 battles. Although he had suffered a great deal, his reaction was extremely fast. If he couldn't use his hands, he would use his mouth. But Li Yan still gave him a punch in the face, knocking Honam backwards, not giving Honam a chance to fight back. Li Yan Munamuda continuously punched Honam 300 times. After receiving Li Yan's full combo, Honam is completely done for. Completely done for. The audience immediately exploded. Now that's what I call fun. I'll buy this kid for $1 million to win, he'll be mine. Handsome, one more round with weapons. Tudu watched Li Yan's performance, then started to have a seizure. Tudu's face was flushed. breathing heavily from low to more and more urgent. Finally letting out a satisfied sigh. She rolled over and rested her head on her arm, looking at Li Yan's seductive face on the screen. Her eyes fluttered. The corners of her mouth turned up and she muttered, "Wonderful." Li Yan went into the bathroom. He splashed water on his face and took the opportunity to think about his future. He had nothing to worry about in terms of strong opponents. He looked at himself in the mirror. 3 million yuan, a copy of a collection of ancient female novels. Or maybe even more. Li Yan bent down and cupped water to his face, washing it for a while. The water on his face slowly dripped down. Li Yan frowned, his eyes full of determination. He would definitely get it all. After washing his face, Li Yan returned to the rest area. For the fighters. It was a small, dilapidated, and dark room. Li Yan frowned, his eyes seemed to light up. He was watching the people in the room. Only his enemies emitted a red light. The higher the level of threat to him, the darker the red. It seemed like a special perk for walking through hell. Li Yan was observing for a while, when Red Devil, who was standing in the corner, smiled and said, "Ah. You're here." Li Yan looked at him. Red Devil was put aside for now. The important thing was the man sitting near Red Devil. The red color on this guy was the strongest here. He was a muscular man who looked like some kind of mercenary. This man's level of hatred for him seemed to be on par with Tiu Chou. Red Devil saw that Li Yan was dumbfounded and walked over. He handed him a wad of cash and asked, "What are you doing?" "Take some time to open a bank account. I'll deposit your winnings." Li Yan looked at the wad of cash Red Devil gave him and wondered. "So this is it," Red Devil chuckled and said, "Judy gave it to you. Take it and buy yourself some nice clothes. She wants to take you out to eat tomorrow. You must be hungry after fighting for so long. Come on, let's go eat." Li Yan forced a smile and awkwardly said, "Well, I just saw blood today, so I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. How about another day?" To put it more bluntly, Li Yan didn't want to. But Red Devil didn't think much of it. He patted Li Yan on the shoulder and chuckled. "You should eat even more after seeing blood." Li Yan didn't refuse anymore. He put his arm around Red Devil's shoulder and walked out together. Laughing and talking happily, the eyes in the room were all on them. The scene shifted to a street food stall. Business seemed to be going well. But I never expected that the place Red Devil took me to would be here. He thought he was going to some high-class nightclub. Looking at the noisy and bustling atmosphere of the common people, the more Li Yan ate, the more he couldn't believe it. Is that all? Contrary to Li Yan, Red Devil was very comfortable. He dipped the meat into the pot and ate. He smiled happily and said, "This hot pot is delicious. Try it." "Well, things have already happened, let's just eat." The two of them, after a while of eating and drinking, were full of beer and refreshment. Red Devil chuckled and said, "That's right, ADM. Which master did you study under? I see you know a lot." Li Yan didn't answer but asked back, "Brother Red Devil, you know a lot about traditional martial arts." Red Devil chuckled and said, "I wouldn't say I know everything about Long Tan. Who dares to say that they know about martial arts in Tai Tuesday's territory? My little knowledge is also from Tai Tuesday. It's just guidance. Tai Tuesday has a very high level of traditional martial arts. For example, Hong Ki and Tai Li Fat, who is the honorary president of the Hong Kong Martial Arts Association. His legs. I don't know how many martial arts schools he's broken here. The title of manager of Long Tan Arena was created by Tai Tuesday with his own fists and kicks. Tell me, isn't his level high?" Red Devil drank his beer and said helplessly, "What the hell, am I asking you or are you asking me?" Li Yan said calmly, "I told you before. I went to Guangdong to travel. I also studied under the master of Bak Hakman before I became a disciple. I studied under another master. So I don't belong to any particular school." Li Yan suddenly remembered that woman. So he asked, "I wonder, Brother Red Devil, have you ever heard of the name Loi Hun Sin?" Red Devil immediately said, "No." Suddenly, a commotion nearby caught Li Yan's attention. Some thug was pointing at the water that had spilled on him and yelling at it too. "Are you blind?" Kitatu said fearfully, I'm sorry. The thug raised his hand to slap Atu, but she screamed and dodged. Seeing this, the thug became even more enraged and stood up. He used his other hand to hit her painfully. You dare to dodge? Atu's face was red with a slap mark. She said with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry. Atu was crying, and it hurt so much, it would be strange if she didn't cry. And that thug. He's a classic bully. Seeing her crying so pitifully made him even angrier. He raised his hand again, ready to beat her to death. Just then, a hand stopped him. Here comes the hero to save the beauty. The thug then received a full blow from a pair of sneakers. His face was covered in dirt. His face was disfigured, it was really pitiful. With one kick from Li Yan, an ordinary person couldn't possibly not fly 10 meters away. The tables and chairs behind him were knocked over. Li Yan stepped forward. Atu said with a smile, he splashed hot water on me. Come on, I'll apologize for my sister, okay? The other guy yelled, you want to fight my brothers? A group of thugs with fierce looks came up to them, surrounding Li Yan and Atu. Bullying the weak, they picked the wrong person to mess with. They must have been unlucky in their past lives. The guy who had been kicked meters away by Li Yan had now gotten up. He was covered in blood. His nose was bleeding profusely. He said furiously, you think you're a hero, huh? Damn it. You dare to hit someone from Huafu and swung. He then stepped forward and snatched the knife from his underling's hand and said, if you like being a hero so much, then why don't you go all the way? He pointed the blade at Li Yan and said, stab me in the neck, and we'll call it even. Otherwise, I'll kill you. Only a fool would challenge the wrong person. Li Yan swung his hand and the knife in the thug's hand flew up. It spun a few times in the air and landed right in Li Yan's hand. He then stabbed the knife down with force. The knife, of course, didn't stab the thug in the neck. It was just a little scare tactic. But the guy who had the guts to challenge him, but not the guts to die, was scared out of his wits. He collapsed to the ground, trembling. The place where the hot water had been spilled was now wet again. He's such a crybaby. Red Devil, who was eating nearby, suddenly spoke up. He asked coldly, are you gangsters so scary? Want to kill someone? Those guys immediately recognized who this person was. The bull-headed guy stammered in horror. Brother Hong. Brother Red Devil, you're here too. Red Devil chewed his food and said casually, you're new to Huathuan Swan, aren't you? I haven't seen you before. I come here often. Why is this girl so grumpy? Apologize to the girl, pay for the tables and chairs, and get out of here. How could he not listen? When Red Devil had spoken, he quickly clasped his hands together and said sincerely, I'm sorry, little sister. I'm a rude person. Please forgive me for my harsh words. I'm sorry. Red Devil said again, then quickly disappeared. The other guys also hurriedly ran away. After everyone had left, Red Devil came over. He rubbed at Tooth's head and said with a smile, I didn't expect you to like this type. No wonder I introduced Judy to you. And you didn't react at all. Li Yan forced a helpless smile and explained. She's my neighbor. You were the one who gave me the house key. Have you forgotten? Red Devil laughed and said, I was just kidding. With that, he took out a phone and handed it to Li Yan and said, take it. You don't have to go to the ring tomorrow. Go buy yourself some decent clothes. Wait for my call and go meet Judy. If you dare to disappear on me again, I'll throw you into the sea. Li Yan said in surprise, oh. Brother Red Devil, you're so good to me. You gave me a house and a mobile phone. Let me tell you now. I don't swing that way. Red Devil laughed and lit a cigarette. He almost dropped it after lighting it. Ha ha ha, that's right. In a small alley deep in the bustling city, Li Yan took Atu home to her doorstep. Atu shyly thanked him and went inside. Li Yan also returned to his own house. He closed the door and said, you're welcome. Just then, a terrible headache suddenly struck. Li Yan gritted his teeth and endured it, but not for long. He had only been home for a short while when he collapsed on the floor. This time, he fainted and didn't know when he would wake up. Fortunately, Li Yan was still conscious. He gritted his teeth and clutched the fabric to endure the pain. Then he tried to find his painkillers. His bones had started to ache when he got off the ring earlier. He had endured it until now. It wasn't easy. That's why he had wanted to refuse Red Devil's invitation. Li Yan tried to crawl onto the bed, His body couldn't help but tremble. He had drunk some beer with Red Devil earlier. Now he was in even more pain. Li Yan pulled out the wad of cash that Red Devil had given him. It was still there. There was more than 3,000 in there. Plus the 50,000 he had won. Red Devil would deposit it into his account tomorrow. He would have 13 hell points. Tomorrow. He would use the money to buy the cell enhancer S, otherwise. If he had an attack in the rain, it would be game over. Moreover, he still had no clues about the copy of the ancient novel collection. The next day, a new day dawned on Honkai's land. After a night's rest, Li Yan had recovered quite a bit. He got up early and went out in a suit. That evening, Li Yan quickly found the place Julie had asked him to meet. And with her, had dinner at a fancy restaurant. Under the moon, he watched Julie walk happily. Under the candlelight. The two of them were a perfect match. Li Yan maintained his usual demeanor. He chatted calmly, like a true gentleman. Julie sat quietly and listened, looking very happy. The yacht slowly drifted on the river. After dinner, Li Yan took the bus home. What an ironic life. On his way home, he saw a group of thugs bullying a woman. A drunk man was lying on the side of the road. In another place, there was a prostitute standing there. Li Yan sighed as he walked. He thought to himself, socializing is more tiring than I thought. I have to make time to rest. I can't afford to be careless. Suddenly, a man rushed out of a small alley. Li Yan was so surprised that he didn't have time to dodge. As a result, the man who was in such a hurry that he wasn't paying attention bumped into Li Yan. Li Yan raised his hand and grabbed the man's wrist with quite a bit of force. Out of habit. The other man was no slouch either. He immediately grabbed Li Yan's other hand and twisted it behind his back. This movement was extremely skillful and quick. And more importantly, Li Yan recognized it. It was military grappling. The two of them both took a few steps back. The other man raised both his hands and said with a smile, "Sorry about that." Li Yan nodded and asked with a smile, "Brother, where are you from?" The other man replied with a smile, "I'm from Hajiang, Anban district." Li Yan said with a smile, "I'm also from Hajiang. I even peed behind the abandoned temple in Anban district." With that, Li Yan reached out to the other man and said, "I'm Li Yan. What's your name, brother?" The other man shook his hand and said with a smile, "Ha Andong. Everyone calls me Andong." Li Yan nodded and said, "I didn't expect to meet a fellow countryman here. That's rare. What brings you to Hong Kong?" The other man suddenly looked a little uncomfortable and replied, "I brought some fellow countrymen with me. We were going to make some money in Hong Kong." But then, he clearly didn't want to talk about himself, so Ha Andong suddenly changed the subject. He asked, "Never mind about me. What brings you to Hong Kong?" Li Yan shrugged and said with a smile, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Forget it." Ha Andong pressed, "What wouldn't I believe? Did you rob a bank? Are you being hunted by the Hong Kong police?" Before he could answer, Li Yan's phone suddenly rang. Li Yan answered the phone and asked, "Hello, brother Red Devil. Are you calling me for drinks again? I just finished dinner with Judy." Red Devil said anxiously on the other end, "Where are you?" Li Yan lowered his head slightly and whispered, "At the apartment building." Red Devil immediately said, "Hide in your house and don't go out. There's a group of armed robbers hiding in the apartment building. The stew is already there. Be careful, you don't want to get caught in the crossfire." Li Yan said with a smile, "Next time you talk on the phone, keep your voice down. You're talking so loud that the person next to me can hear you clearly. It's embarrassing." Red Devil didn't pay much attention. He continued, "Those robbers are cold-blooded killers. They're ruthless. The leader's name is A." Before he could say the name, Li Yan suddenly hung up on Red Devil. He was clearly hiding something. Li Yan held the phone to his chest and said to Ha Andong with a smile, "My friend likes to talk nonsense. He shouldn't call people inhumane. It's offensive." Suddenly, a ginger cat ran up to them. It looked at Li Yan and meowed. A hand appeared from behind and grabbed the ginger cat. Atu was holding the kitten in her arms. She looked at Li Yan worriedly and asked, "Brother DM, is the kitty being naughty?" Is it bothering you? Li Yan crouched down and looked at A2. He asked, do you have any change? Can you do me a favor? Can you go buy me a pack of candy? A2 smiled and said, then you have to wait for me here. Then she happily ran off with the ginger cat. Meanwhile, while Li Yan's back was turned to Ha and Dong, he pulled out a strange object from under his jacket. It looked like a gun. About an hour ago, in a luxurious building, in a luxurious room, a man in a police uniform was sitting there smoking a cigar. He squinted at the person opposite him and said, the north side of Long Tan Street is Tide Tuesday's territory. Although I'm in charge of security in Long Tan. But when it comes to finding someone in Tide Tuesday's territory, chuckles, Officer Chan. You don't have to be so formal. My men are just arena staff. How can they possibly help the police find someone? Officer Chan, you can investigate wherever you want. Just don't turn our place upside down. Officer Chan adjusted his glasses and looked at Hong Gue. Why don't you ask Tai Sui first? I'm not in a hurry. Hong Gue shook his head and chuckled. If I bother Tai Sui with this, he'll break my legs. Take your time, officer. Suddenly, the door opened, and a man walked in. Looking at Officer Chan. Sir, we found him. They went to a familiar Chinese medicine clinic. The doctor there secretly called the police. The police are already in Kowloon. Officer Chan chuckled upon hearing this. It seems we don't need to bother Tai Sui after all. Hong Gue looked at the man and asked, where's the clinic? The man immediately replied, Number 22, Temple Street. It was the same place where Li DM was confronting them. Li DM was about to turn around and look at Ha and Dong. He said, whether someone has humanity or not isn't determined by words, but by actions. And actions speak louder than words. This Ha and Dong must be the inhumane person that Li DM was referring to. Ha and Dong coldly ordered, turn around. Li DM faced the gun pointed at his head. This was getting a bit too intense. One wrong move and he'd be toast. He cautiously said, killing me now wouldn't do you any good. Any good. Suddenly, the system appeared and asked, you have obtained some information. Do you want to check it? Checking it will cost 1 DM Fu point. Li DM immediately agreed. The world in his eyes was now like a sensor. His eyes glowed red with a strange energy. The system asked again, do you want to use a glimpse of brilliance on the target? Upon obtaining information about the target or discovering their weakness, a prompt will appear and DM Fu points will be deducted automatically. Target locked. Ha and Dong. You can unlock at any time. After a quick scan, it said, unfortunately, you did not find the opponent's weakness. If the target remains under the effects of a glimpse of brilliance for a long time, the probability of discovering their weakness will increase. Their weakness will increase. You have obtained the following information. It included his weapons, current status, threat level and name. Assessment. In principle, we do not recommend cultivators to engage. Cultivators do not have any abilities to withstand firearms. Of course, for black threat level and below, you still have a chance. Good luck. The man didn't seem to be planning to kill Li DM, but his injuries seemed to be acting up. He was sweating more and more. He said, just do as I say. Don't waste my time. At a Chinese medicine clinic. Inside the clinic, a group of people were tending to their injured comrade when a knock on the door attracted their attention. The man lying on the bed weakly called out, Ah Dong. They quickly opened the door for Ha Dong. Li DM also walked in, under duress. Ha Dong closed the door and said, Gao Chang. Tie his hands up. Be careful, he might be a martial artist. Li DM looked at Ha Dong with suspicion. Ha Dong looked back, clearly not planning to let him go. Suddenly, a man rushed out from the back room. Upon seeing Li DM, he panicked and asked, Ah Dong. Why did you bring him here? Ha Dong left Li DM to his men and walked over to the doctor with a smile. Sorry, Uncle One. I have 40,000 yuan left, plus the 20,000 from before. Take it all. We might have to stay here a while longer. Please take care of our injuries. His eyes lit up at the sight of money. Uncle Wen turned around and walked inside, chuckling. Ah Dong. You don't have to be so polite. We're all friends. If you need anything, I'll definitely help. But turning his back on Ha Yi-dong was a fatal mistake. Without hesitation, Ha Yi-dong pointed his gun at Uncle Wen's head and fired. Blood splattered everywhere. Uncle Wen died before he could utter a word. Ha Yi-dong's expression was cold as he looked at Uncle Wen's collapsing body. He said, he called the police. They're coming, let's go. Uncle Wen's body lay on the floor. Blood pooled around him. Li Diem's eyebrows furrowed. This Ah Dong is really dangerous. Decisive. And ruthless if we don't leave now. We'll be trapped. Once the police block us here. It's not like outside. This place is too cramped and crowded. And the terrain is very complex. But escaping wouldn't be easy either. Hearing Ha Yi-dong say they should leave, Gao Cheng pointed at their injured comrade, lying on the ground, and asked, "What about Xiao Jin?" Ha Yi-dong walked over and grabbed Xiao Jin's hand. He asked, "Xiao Jin, do you trust me?" "Trust me." Xiao Jin weakly nodded. Brother Dong, I trust you." Ha Yi-dong said solemnly. "Listen to me. You won't be executed for piracy in Hong Kong. Stay here. The police will take you to the hospital. Wait for me. As long as I'm alive, I'll break you out of jail." As soon as Ha Yi-dong finished speaking, Xiao Jin was stunned. And the other comrade was furious. He stepped forward and said, "Brother Dong, you said you wouldn't leave Xiao Jin behind." Ha Yi-dong roared furiously. "You guys promise to listen to me when we get out." The more he spoke, the angrier the other comrade became. He yelled, "You want us to abandon our own brother? We entrusted our lives to you. And this is how you treat us?" Two guns were raised simultaneously, pointed at each other's heads. Ha Yi-dong declared firmly, "If I wanted to abandon my brothers, I wouldn't have come back. I'm saying this one last time. Let's go." Being threatened like this only enraged the other comrade further. He lost his composure and yelled, "Shoot! Kill me and take my share." He then kicked a nearby object in anger. "Damn it! We can rob, but we can't spend." The suitcase full of money flew into the wall and burst open. Stacks of cash scattered on the ground. Ha Yi-dong shouted, "Damn it! Shut up." They were too busy arguing to notice the dangerous man behind them, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Seizing the moment, Li Diem quickly grabbed a small knife from the nearby tools and wrapped his arm around Gao Cheng's neck, who was standing nearby, catching everyone completely off guard. His movements were swift and skillful, despite having his hands tied. He effortlessly took Gao Cheng hostage. As expected of a rare expert, Ha Yi-dong shouted in shock, "Chang Ji!" Li Diem pressed the knife against Gao Cheng's neck, drawing a small amount of blood. He threatened coldly, "If I pull this knife, he's dead." Step back to his surprise. Ha Yi-dong raised his gun and shouted, "If you pull that knife, you're dead." Li Diem coldly replied, "One more move and I pull." The other two comrades pointed their guns at Li Diem and yelled, "Pull it! Go ahead and pull it. The police are coming, we're all going to die anyway. We might as well die together." Then, Ha Yi-dong suddenly softened his tone and said, "Fellow countrymen, I, Ha Yi-dong, admit defeat today. I'll count to 3, we'll drop our guns. You release him, how about that?" Li Diem coldly replied. Fine. Ha Yi-dong started counting. When he reached 3, Li Diem pulled the knife. Blood spurted from Gao Cheng's neck, and Ha Yi-dong dropped his gun. But then, in an instant, he bent down and picked up the gun. Without any wasted movement. He just had the bad luck to run into a master today. In this place. By the time Ha Yi-dong picked up his gun, Li Diem had already cut his bonds. Ha Yi-dong raised his gun. But before he could fire, Li Diam threw the bloodstained knife at Ha Yidong. The knife hit its mark, slicing across Ha Yidong's hand, making him unable to hold the gun. In a fight, being weaker than your opponent and dropping your weapon is a recipe for disaster. Li Diam lunged at Ha Yidong and kneed him hard in the jaw. Qi Chang instinctively pointed his gun at Li Diam. But after dealing with Ha Yidong, Li Diam immediately charged at Qi Chang with incredible speed, leaving him no time to react. At least one shot was fired, but it seemed that the close range and rapid movement resulted in a miss. Li Diam had narrowly escaped death. He punched Qi Chang in the head. Qi Chang was no match for Li Diam's strength. One punch was all it took to knock him down. At this moment, Ha Yidong, who was thought to be unconscious, suddenly got up. He noticed the gun lying next to him. Li Diam reached for a nearby knife. Xiaojun, who was lying injured on the bed, mustered all his strength and jumped down, grabbing Li Diam's leg and shouting, "Brother Dong, run!" Li Diam acted decisively, stabbing Xiaojun in the temple with his knife. Another life taken. Xiaojun's body fell to the floor, and Ha Yidong rolled towards the gun. A spectacular roll. He grabbed the gun just as Li Diam charged at him. He raised the gun, aiming it at Li Diam. But Li Diam, like a demon, with just a knife and his incredible speed, managed to take down Ha Yidong before he could fire. It was a quick and brutal fight. Silence filled the room as bodies lay scattered on the floor. In Li Diam's mind, only the system's voice could be heard. A glimpse of brilliance duration. 9 minutes and 43 seconds. Target's weakness not found. 5 DM points consumed. Target lock deactivated. Target deceased. The system continued. You have obtained 2 fragments of the ancient novel collection. You have officially started this underworld event. Event requirements. Awaken the remnant soul in the fragment with the bird head design. Failure. All points in this underworld event will be deducted, and purchase privileges revoked. In this underworld event, location of the ancient novel collection fragments will be updated irregularly. Effective range 5 kilometers. Please check frequently. The first 2 fragments Li Diam received were Europe and Qi Guan 11. There was a small note below. The more fragments you collect, the more beneficial. The impact of your actions in this underworld event will provide purchase limit overrides and higher settlement rewards. The greater the impact of your actions, the higher the settlement reward. This principle applies to most underworld events. Note: remember what I said when you first entered this space. Cause chaos. Lord Executor. Looking at the 2 pieces of paper on the ground, Li Diam felt a mix of emotions. It was truly ironic. Who would have thought that such a dangerous fight would bring him such an opportunity? Soon after, the police arrived, but they were immediately thrown into confusion. What the hell happened here? Fortunately, Li Diam stayed behind, so they at least had a witness to interview. Li Diam was taken to the police station. The police took his statement. They said the bank robbers had stolen a large amount of antiques. At the bank, there were supposed to be 5 fragments of the book for a charity auction. Li Diam stood up and walked out. He was so lost in thought that he didn't notice the awkward looks from the police officers. He was wondering if the remaining fragments had been sold by those guys. Li Diam left the police station. As he reached the parking lot and stretched, he saw Hong Gue standing there. He had been waiting for a while. How did it go? Did the police give you any trouble? Li Diam walked towards Hong Gue and shook his head, chuckling. Thanks for your help, Hong Gue. Li Diam knew that with the things he had done, if he didn't have help, he wouldn't be safe. Hong Gue took a drag of his cigarette and exhaled a cloud of smoke. He said. Tai Sui pulled some strains. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten out so quickly. He chuckled. And pointed at a woman waiting in a nearby luxury car. He said. Judy paid your bail. Go thank her later. Judy was wearing a simple yellow dress. Simple. But it still accentuated her curves. Simple. But with an air of elegance. The wind blew through her hair, making her even more beautiful. Hearing that he had to go with Judy, Lee DM forced a smile. I just caused such a big scene. It wouldn't be appropriate to go out with her now. Honggue put his arm around Lee DM's shoulder and said seriously. She's a billionaire. Long legs, big breasts, pretty face, and you're still hesitating. She even gave you money. And you look like you're about to be executed. What's wrong with you after some persuasion from Honggue? Lee DM reluctantly smiled and walked towards Judy. Judy also walked over and took his arm, smiling naturally. She first took Lee DM to buy clothes. It was getting late, so they went to a fancy restaurant for dinner. Piano music filled the air. Judy sat opposite Lee DM, resting her chin on her hand and looking at him. Her charm was undeniable. It's been a long time since I've personally bought a suit for someone. You look great in it. It looks good. But Lee DM was heartbroken. This suit cost enough to buy him an enhanced blood cell booster. Heartbroken. But Judy didn't care about the money at all. As expected of the billionaire Honggue had mentioned. She was completely focused on the man in front of her. In front of her, Lee DM felt a bit uncomfortable under her gaze. He chuckled and said, I can understand someone spending any amount of money to support a fighter in the arena. But what I don't understand is why would a woman invite a thug who just killed 4 people to dinner and even buy him an expensive suit? He took out a cigarette, looked at Judy and asked, I'm curious. What do you know about me? Judy didn't answer immediately. Instead, she chuckled and said. The first time Honggue introduced me to you, I think he said something about the Queen of Kowloon. What did you think when you saw me? Lee DM took out his lighter and lit his cigarette as he said. I thought, this woman must be a billionaire. Lee DM took a drag and exhaled a puff of smoke. He then used his handsome face to flash a charming smile and said. If I were desperate, I'd find an opportunity to kidnap you. And get enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Judy was speechless. Her smile disappeared. Well, that's an interesting answer. Judy chuckled. Judy chuckled. It's a bit hurtful. And a bit of an insult. Under the table. Under the table. Judy's high-heeled feet were restless. If you really kidnapped me, would you only want money? Lee DM shook his head and chuckled. I don't know. I'll figure it out then. Judy tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear and said slowly. You asked how well I understand you. Bloodlust and violence. Some people are afraid of these things. Or even disgusted by them. Judy reached out. And gently touched the glass of red wine in front of her. She chuckled and touched her upper lip with her index finger. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She continued. And others are fascinated by them. Fists, sweat, flesh, even killing. I'm the second type, Lee DM said. There are many others in the Kowloon arena. Judy didn't hesitate. They're too ugly. After all, I have my standards. I'd rather choose someone handsome. Judy suddenly raised her hand. And beckoned Lee DM. Come closer. Lee DM leaned towards Judy. Judy also leaned towards him. She said. The first time I saw you fight, I was extremely excited. So excited that even now, just thinking about it. Judy's face flushed with excitement. But her elegance made her excitement even more alluring. Alluring. Judy leaned closer to Lee DM and exhaled gently on his face. Lee DM swallowed, his face flushed. This woman was really something. He pulled back and turned his head away. But he couldn't hide his embarrassment. He had been flustered by this woman. Flustered. Judy seemed to enjoy Lee DM's reaction. Watching him awkwardly adjust his bow tie amused her. After their luxurious dinner, Lee DM returned to his usual residence. The same dilapidated surroundings. People fighting everywhere. Prostitutes soliciting customers. It was always the same. Suddenly, Lee DM felt his body heat up. As if he had sensed something. It was the location of a fragment. The location of a fragment of the ancient novel collection had been updated. He then used his handsome face to flash a charming smile and said, "If I were desperate, I'd find an opportunity to kidnap you and get enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life." Judy was speechless. Her smile disappeared. "Well, that's an interesting answer." Judy chuckled. Judy chuckled. "It's a bit hurtful. And a bit of an insult. Under the table. Under the table." Judy's high-heeled feet were restless. "If you really kidnapped me, would you only want money?" Lee DM shook his head and chuckled. "I don't know. I'll figure it out then." Judy tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear and said slowly, "You asked how well I understand you. Bloodlust and violence. Some people are afraid of these things, or even disgusted by them." Judy reached out and gently touched the glass of red wine in front of her. She chuckled and touched her upper lip with her index finger. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She continued, "And others are fascinated by them. Fists, sweat, flesh, even killing. I'm the second type." Lee DM said, "There are many others in the Kowloon arena." Judy didn't hesitate. "They're too ugly. After all, I have my standards. I'd rather choose someone handsome." Judy suddenly raised her hand and beckoned Lee DM. "Come closer." Lee DM leaned towards Judy. Judy also leaned towards him. She said, "The first time I saw you fight, I was extremely excited. So excited that even now, just thinking about it." Judy's face flushed with excitement. But her elegance made her excitement even more alluring. Alluring. Judy leaned closer to Lee DM and exhaled gently on his face. Lee DM swallowed, his face flushed. This woman was really something. He pulled back and turned his head away. But he couldn't hide his embarrassment. He had been flustered by this woman. Flustered. Judy seemed to enjoy Lee DM's reaction. Watching him awkwardly adjust his bow tie amused her. After their luxurious dinner, Lee DM returned to his usual residence. The same dilapidated surroundings. People fighting everywhere. Prostitutes soliciting customers. It was always the same. Suddenly, Lee DM felt his body heat up. As if he had sensed something. It was the location of a fragment. The location of a fragment of the ancient novel collection had been updated. Attention! Investigation! Lee DM was surprised as he looked at what had appeared before him. It was a detailed map of Kowloon Walled City. It clearly showed the time and location. Kowloon Walled City, Hong Kong, 1986. It also showed Lee DM's location and the target's location. Distance: 100 meters. Lee DM was moving away from the target. Lee DM turned around and ran. He picked up speed. It was unclear how many. Alleys and streets. Alleys and streets. Lee DM ran deep into Kowloon Walled City. Before stopping. Report complete. Report duration: 1 minute. Lee DM had just arrived at the location. He had made some progress today. He at least knew that there were at least 2 more fragments in the city. 2 men were guarding the nearby entrance. When they saw Lee DM, they told him to leave. Someone was coming out from inside. It turned out to be Wasam's base. The person who came out was Zhou Duetao. Lee DM looked at Zhou Duetao and chuckled. "Hello, Master Zhou. Since you're here, come in and have a seat. Have some tea. It's a bit simple, but..." Wasam looked at Lee DM. He chuckled and asked, "What brings you here?" Lee DM made up a story without blinking. "Someone stole my wallet. I chased him here and ran into you." Wasam chuckled and asked, "You're the famous King Yama in the city now. Everyone knows you. Who would dare to mess with you? They must be tired of living." Lee DM chuckled modestly. "You're joking. Calling yourself King Yama in Kowloon Walled City is asking for trouble." Wasam took a sip of his wine and looked at Zhou Duetao, chuckling. "You two will meet in the arena soon. Xiao Zhou has been on a roll. He's won 4 fights in a row. Chinese Kung Fu was beating the crap out of those Thais. Zhou Duitao nodded with a confident smile. He looked at Li DM and chuckled. Soon. Li DM ignored him and asked Hua Sam. By the way, Hua Sam. I'm new here, I don't know anything. Is there a big pawn shop? In Kowloon walled city. I brought a family heirloom with me. From mainland China. I want to see how much I can sell it for. Zhou Duitao's face darkened. This guy always talked about money. Hua Sam listened patiently to Li DM. And said. There's a pawn shop across the street. The owner gives fair prices. And he has a lot of connections, so he takes everything. There aren't many pawnbrokers in Kowloon walled city. No one really needs good stuff here anyway. If you want to sell it for a high price, you should go outside the city. While they were talking, Zhou Duitao was sweating profusely. Lost in thought. Is this guy really that desperate for money? No wonder. There have been rumors lately about Judy dating someone. While Zhou Duitao was still lost in thought, Li DM got up to leave. Zhou Duitao snapped back to reality. He looked at Li DM and said, Master Li, see you in the arena. Li DM turned around and waved. As he walked away. See you in the arena. Kowloon walled city was still bustling. People were going about their business. After his meeting with Hua Sam, Li DM returned home. And changed into his usual clothes. He sat down and looked at the images on the paper. 9 bird heads. Europe. Qi Guangxi. The creatures on the paper were clearly not ordinary. Not ordinary. Li DM put the paper with all the information on the table. And that fat guy who called himself Mo. They were all mythical beings from Chinese mythology. All baseless legends. He looked at the paper with the image of Qi Guangxi. And then at the note on the back. At least, that fat guy had brought him to Kowloon walled city. This a glimpse of brilliance. Was truly magical. That horse. Deep voice had called him an underworld executor. What exactly was the underworld? The map of Kowloon walled city. And Li DM's mission objectives appeared before his eyes. After leaving Hua Sam's place, he had tried to follow the target a few times. But it always moved away whenever he got close. But it would sneak closer when he wasn't paying attention. Li DM couldn't help but conclude that the person holding the fragment knew about his existence. He wasn't the only underworld executor in this world. In this world, the other party was very cautious. They wouldn't be easy to deal with. He decided to check the purchase and item exchange options first. The first thing Li DM exchanged for was the enhanced blood cell booster. That voice spoke again. You have spent 10 DM Fu points to purchase the enhanced blood cell generator S. This item can only be purchased once per underworld event. Instructions for using the enhanced blood cell generator S are as follows. It has strong drowsiness effects when treating blood diseases, such as abnormal blood cell production. Use in a safe location. Executors with bloodline inheritance may experience unpredictable results after using this item. Use with caution. Thirdly, this item cannot completely cure the disease. If the condition is severe, additional purchases may be required. A10 appeared in the purchase section. Li DM stared at it. He couldn't completely cure his illness after all. Li DM's expression was complex, as if he had come to terms with reality. He lay down on the bed, feeling exhausted. His eyes slowly closed. He fell asleep without realizing it. The moon shone brightly over Kowloon walled city. It was another beautiful day. Li DM woke up and clenched his fists. His muscles bulged. He jumped out of bed excitedly. This felt amazing. That's right, it's been a long time since I've felt this feeling again. If that's the case, I had to test it out. Li Yen closed his eyes and felt the inner strength within his body. He turned his body, 1 foot in front and 1 foot behind. He raised his hand and then swung it forward. Li Yan's punch carried tremendous force as it flew towards the wall. The wall seemed to shake, and he could vaguely see some stone fragments shattering. Li Yan looked at his arm with joy. His strength had recovered quite a bit. I'm so happy I came here. He would definitely not regret coming here. Suddenly, Li Yan's phone rang. He picked it up. And was a little surprised to see the time on the phone. He hadn't expected to sleep for a whole day and night. The caller was Judy. Li Yan answered the phone. In a luxurious room. There were people standing guard outside. Inside the room, Red Devil was holding someone's file in his hand. He looked at the person sitting next to him in surprise. And asked. Tu Tien Tai, the special one, went to meet him? What's his background? The person talking to Red Devil was Lu Triton, the #1 fighter manager at Kowloon Tan Tri. He replied to Red Devil's question. He's a new fighter who just entered the ring in Long Tan. He hasn't lost a single match yet. Red Devil threw Tu Tien Tu's printed file on the table and said. Brother Lu, you also said he's a newcomer. It's normal that he hasn't lost yet. Besides, even if he's undefeated, there's no reason for Tai Tuesday to meet him personally. Li Yan has already won 10 matches. And Tai Tuesday didn't even care. Lu Kai Thong hadn't finished speaking. He frowned and explained. Tai Tuesday met him not because of his achievements, but mainly because of his grandfather, Tu Thuong Dien. Red Devil knew this name, of course. Tu Thuong Dien was a direct disciple of IP Man, one of the 4 great kings of Wing Chun. He once set a record of 32 consecutive wins in the ring at Kowloon Tan Tri, which made no one at Kowloon Tan Tri dare to enter the ring. Damn, Red Devil's attitude towards Tu Tien Tu changed. This kid is not simple. At a fighting club, 2 fighters were exchanging blows in the ring. The surroundings were filled with cheers. One of the fighters in the ring was Chao Dui Dao. He was facing an opponent who was wielding twin blades. Chao Dui Dao specialized in kicks and punches, so he was using spiked bear paw gauntlets. He charged at his opponent and punched with the gauntlets. The people around them were shouting non-stop. Li Yan had also come to watch this match. From the looks of things, it seemed that Master Chao had the upper hand. Suddenly, a hand landed on Li Yan's shoulder and asked, Do you mind if I sit next to you, brother? It was a woman's voice. Li Yan was a little surprised. He looked at the person who had just spoken to him. It was a beautiful girl with curves in all the right places. Her face was also quite pretty. Li Yan didn't answer. He just gave a standard smile. The other person twisted her body a few times. He didn't know what she was doing. Then she sat down and took out a small flask of alcohol. As soon as she opened the lid, the aroma spread. Li Yan asked casually, Baiju? The girl didn't answer right away. She took a sip from the flask. Li Yan sighed. It's rare to see a woman who likes to drink Baiju. The girl wiped her mouth and said with a smile. It's a bad habit that I can't get rid of. Then she looked at the ring and suddenly started analyzing. His fist is the right of Van Tan, but his footwork is tree and long hot neon. In the Tai Chi praying mantis plum blossom fist, the Trom Kiu Daima of the Van Tan fist, and the agility of the praying mantis fist. To be able to blend the two so seamlessly means that he has reached a high level of mastery. This kid is very talented. At this moment, Zhou Dui Dao was in the ring, exchanging kicks with his opponent. The other person quickly revealed an opening. While he was still off balance, Zhou Dui Dao landed another punch. The girl sitting next to Li Yan sighed. The monster catcher under Red Devil is very violent and cruel. He's more experienced than this guy. The other man was kicked away by Zhou Dui Dao. The girl sitting next to Li Yan smiled and said, Weak and feeble. All he has is looks. If this guy realizes the truth, it's hard to say who will win. Oh, it's rare to meet someone who can analyze so well. Especially a woman. Li Yan asked with a smile, Miss, do you like watching fights? It seems like you've studied traditional martial arts quite deeply. Unexpectedly, the girl looked up at him and asked, Are you hitting on me? Li Yan forced a smile and said, Just making conversation. Seeing Li Yan's awkwardness, the girl laughed and said, Don't be nervous. I'm happy to be hit on by a handsome guy. When I was young, I studied under Master Trong. then Tan of the 8 trigrams palm school. You could say I'm a descendant of the Don family's 8 trigrams palm. After saying that, she winked playfully at Li Yan. Li Yan asked with a forced smile. You just said that there's someone using the 8 trigrams palm in the ring. Have you seen him fight, miss? It sounds like you don't think highly of him. The girl rested her chin in her hand and said boredly. He's not fighting today. Even if you asked me to identify him, I wouldn't be able to. I don't pay attention to appearances. I only remember moves. It's not the authentic 8 trigrams palm. It must have been taught by those people from the north. I heard that this guy has a terminal illness. If you're betting on him, be careful. So I heard this guy is not simple. Li Yan asked with a forced smile again. Miss. May I ask for your name? What's your name? The girl looked at him and said with a relaxed smile. My surname is Du. My name is Du Tuk. People in the martial arts world call me Tai Tuesday. Li Yan was struck by lightning when he heard that. Something felt wrong. Didn't it? Suddenly meeting Tai Tuesday, who Red Devil had mentioned here like this, felt a bit surreal. Seeing Li Yan's expression, Du Tuk affirmed, yes. I'm the Tai Tuesday you're thinking of. Li Yan asked in surprise, are you kidding me? Tai Tuesday is a woman. She doesn't look like it at all. This is too unexpected. Du Tuk didn't deny it. She looked at him and said with a smile. Even if you're surprised, you should still introduce yourself. Before Li Yan could answer, another woman appeared and answered for him. His name is Li Yan. The person who had just appeared was Judy. She was wearing a rather tight outfit today, which accentuated her curves even more. Judy walked towards Li Yan and said with a smile, so the Tai Tuesday of Kowloon Tan came to her own fighter and didn't even recognize him? With that, she casually sat down next to Li Yan and put her arm around his shoulder. She said, why did you come here? You don't even recognize your boss. Didn't Red Devil introduce you? Hearing this, Du Tuk looked at them and said, people at Phuc Nia building call me Tai Tuesday. You can call me that. So you're Red Devil's new guy? I thought you were some rich kid coming to the arena for fun. Since Judy had confirmed it, there was no doubt. He looked at Du Tuk and bowed in the martial arts style and said, Tai Tuesday. I've heard so much about you. Du Tuk nodded at Li Yan and looked at Judy sitting next to him. Li Yan said with a smile. Long time no see, Ms. Dang. Judy seemed to have something against Du Tuk. As soon as she heard her, she gave her a sarcastic look. She twirled a strand of hair in her hand and said with a smile. Long time no see, Tai Tuesday. You're as beautiful as ever. You should teach me your beauty secrets. Du Tuk didn't back down from Judy. She smiled sarcastically. You're right, Ms. Dang. I remember now, Ms. Dang. If you have any good cosmetics, please recommend them to me. Judy pouted and glared at Du Tuk. She really didn't like this woman. So Judy pulled Li Yan's hand and said, I have something to do with ADM. We'll be going now. As soon as they left, Du Tuk's expression completely changed. Judy was still angry even after they had gone outside. The way she stomped her feet on the floor showed that the two of them must have a deep grudge. Judy even forgot to act gentle and seductive in front of Li Yan. She yelled in frustration. That bitch. She definitely called me that on purpose. With that, she threw her purse on the ground. Li Yan, who was standing next to her, tried to hold back his laughter. Seeing his expression, Judy asked sulkily. Why are you laughing at me? Li Yan quickly poured her a glass of wine and said. Sister Judy, although we haven't known each other for long, but this is the first time I've seen you so angry. Judy was still upset. She took the glass of wine from Li Yan's hand and asked with a pout. How does it feel to meet your real boss for the first time? Is she pretty? Li Yan said with a smile. Of course she's pretty, she's my boss. But not as pretty as you, Sister Judy. Judy finished her glass of wine. She knew that Red Devil was a good horse. If Tide Tuesday could make Red Devil follow her wholeheartedly, then Judy also had a way to make Li Yan submit to her. She put down her glass and walked towards the window. She looked down and asked, by the way, Do you know that a lot of strong newcomers have arrived recently? At Kowloon Tan. Try. They were in a VIP room, where they could look down and see the fights in the rain. At that moment, a fighter had just been defeated. The other person was ruthless. He aimed for the neck and struck. It was a painful death. Blood splattered everywhere. The other person looked very young, although he was wearing a demon mask and a cloak. The pipe in his hand was dripping with his opponent's blood. Li Yan pondered for a moment and then asked, "Is that a Landin Tao?" The Landin Tao is a unique weapon of the Chop Kwok Fian Tu Chien from the north. Although it looks like a smoking pipe, it's a real killing weapon. Li Yan looked at Judy and asked, "Sister Judy, are you interested in this guy? Are you going to bet on him?" Judy chuckled and pushed Li Yan's head gently. "Are you jealous?" He. She looked down and said, "The person who bet on him is Ha Zonghong. I've had it with that idiot for a long time. I don't care how much money I lose betting on fights, but I don't want to lose to him." In the room opposite them was Ha Zonghong. He had two beautiful women in his arms. Judy continued, "This newcomer is named VO2. He's been very popular lately." She then looked at Li Yan and asked, "Tell me the truth. DM. If you fought him, how many times do you think you could win?" This time, Li Yan knew how to coax a girl. He said with a smile, "You're not happy with me, Sister Judy. I'm sure I could knock this guy out 120%. Judy whistled and said, "Hey, I'm serious. He has another fight later. I also have recordings of his previous matches. You can watch them." With that, she walked towards the recording equipment. But before she could get the recordings, a hand pressed down on hers from above. Li Yan put his hand over Judy's. He stood behind her and chuckled. "Sister Judy, when I say 120%, I mean 120%. Judy turned around and looked at the TV silently. Then she leaned in and kissed him gently on the corner of his lips. Li Yan was a little stunned. "You're addicted and yet you're still shy. You're embarrassed and yet you act cold." Judy turned away and flipped her hair in a very sly manner. She said, "Bastard. You're not good enough to seduce me." Just then, the voice rang out again. "The location of the copy of the ancient novel collection has been reported. Attention." Li Yan was startled. A mission notification at this time. He immediately walked towards the door. Outside the ring, the other person had taken off his mask. The surroundings were filled with cheers. It seemed that the other party had also received a mission. His gaze was fixed on the room where Li Yan was standing. His eyes were cold. Li Yan also walked forward. He could tell who it was just by looking at him. He slowly said, "Hello." Loud enough for the other party to read his lips. Then, they both launched a powerful attack. At the same time, in their minds, the voice rang out simultaneously. "You have encountered a fellow professional." In the luxurious room next door, Ha Zonghong was in high spirits, chatting with another man. He said with a smile, "Uncle Loi. It seems like the fighter I chose is a cut above. You lost money tonight." Uncle Loi took out his handkerchief and wiped the sweat off his face. He forced a smile and said, "It seems like we can't underestimate the new fighters in the ring these days." Tony was the highest rated fighter among the veteran fighters in the 6th ring. I didn't expect him to lose to VO2 in 20 moves. "Young Master Ha, you have good taste." Ha Zonghong suddenly beckoned to the person standing next to him. The waiter leaned over and asked with a smile, "Young Master Ha." Ha Zonghong said with a smile, "Give 200,000 to VO2 and tell him I'm buying him dinner tonight." The other man silently took out a cigar and lit it. His face was grim. He forced a smile. Inside, VO2 is so good. "You must have made a lot of money lately, young master." Ha Zonghong said with an arrogant smile. "It's just pocket change. Not many fighters are willing to fight VO2 lately. Even if I'm willing to be the bookmaker, no one dares to bet." As soon as he finished speaking, VO2 walked in, accompanied by a beautiful woman. Ha Zonghong's eyes were glued to the beauty. She was still wearing a demon mask. Ha Zonghong's eyes were glued to the beauty. When he saw the two of them coming, his first attention was on the girl. He looked at her and asked with a smile, "Ami, what brings you here?" Ami walked over to Ha Zonghong and leaned down. She said with a smile, "Young Master Ha, Votu wants to thank you in person for the dinner money you gave him." Then, to Ha Zonghong's surprise, Votu took off his mask and hood. Behind the mask was a very young face, like a high school student. He looked at Ha Zonghong and said with a smile, "Young Master Ha." Ha Zonghong took the glass of wine that the waiter brought him and said with a frown, "Come here and sit down. You fought well today." Votu stood still and said, "Young Master Ha." He looked at Vo2 and frowned, "What's wrong?" Vo2 said with a smile, "I heard that Kowloon Tan Tri has a famous sponsor, Judy, who has a grudge against young Master Ha." Ha Zonghong frowned. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Vo2. In a high-rise building in Kowloon Tan Tri, Li Yan was standing on the rooftop, looking down. He was looking at Vo2's profile. Vo2's real name was Trong Vin Min. The only things he had obtained were the Kin Hong Not Fian skill, ancient martial arts, and a companion. Li Yan looked at the requirements for the DM Fu event again. First, reach the 7th reign in the Kowloon reign. Second, obtain a fragment of the copy of the ancient novel collection. Third, awaken the 9-headed bird in the copy of the ancient novel collection. Among these, only the first requirement was close to being completed. Reach the 7th ring in the Kowloon reign. He only needed to win 2 more matches to complete the mission. The requirement of this event was to awaken the remnant soul of the 9-headed bird. But it didn't specify that it had to be done alone. The companion notification had made many things clear. In principle, he and Vo2 could team up to complete the mission. But the DM Fu event description clearly stated that the more fragments you get, the better the reward. And there were only 5 fragments at most. So who would get more and who would get less? But how could he give the reward to someone else? Just then, the door opened. The rooftop door, which had been closed, was now open. "He's here." Trong Vin Min appeared behind the door and stared at Li Yan. Li Yan didn't turn around to look at Trong Vin Min. He said, "I don't like talking. Today, we're making an exception. We're both here for a reason. I won't ask about your past. And you don't ask about mine. Give me the 2 fragments you have. I'll go find the remnant soul of the 9-headed bird. You can focus on earning points and wait for the time to leave. How about it?" Trong Vin Min looked down at his foot, which was tapping lightly on the ground. He put his hand on his hip and said, "I just met Ha Zonghong. He wants to fight you. He has a grudge against the woman who bet on you. So of course he agreed. I'm a straightforward person. I don't like to cooperate with others. It's unreliable." Li Yan glanced at Trong Vin Min. "In this DM Fu event, if you lose a match, you'll lose all progress in the event and be sent back immediately. You won't be able to interfere in the DM Fu event anymore." Trong Vin Min said, "It's all or nothing." Li Yan finally turned around. He leaned against the railing and exhaled a puff of smoke. Trong Vin Min looked at him seriously and asked, "So, do you agree or not?" Li Yan blew out a puff of smoke and looked at Trong Vin Min. He said, "In a place like Cu Long Tan Tre, where everything is mixed up, the battle of wits between, this could become very complicated. Although you've been learning martial arts since you were young, you're very self-aware. You know that you're young and inexperienced. Instead of playing mind games with an old fox like me, why don't we settle this in the rain?" He dropped his cigarette and stepped on it. He walked towards Trong Vin Min and asked coldly, "Are you afraid I won't accept your challenge? See you in the ring tomorrow." The moment Li Yan walked past Trong Vin Min, he suddenly felt something terrifying emanating from this person. It was as if he were a real king of hell, not just a nickname in the rain. Li Yan laughed, and Trong Vin Min calmed down a bit. He glanced at Li Yan But no one knew what he was thinking. After this encounter, Li Yan realized one thing. Trong Vin Min wasn't the one who was holding a fragment and teasing him. It was definitely not Trong Vin Min. In the rain, two other fighters were exchanging blows. It wasn't very exciting. After meeting with Trong Vin Min, Li Yan went back to the lounge to find Judy and Red Devil. The door suddenly opened, and Hazan Hong appeared, with several bodyguards behind him. He walked in with Ami in his arms, and said, "King of Hell, huh? Let me see. Who will meet the King of Hell tomorrow?" He was completely disrespectful. Li Yan didn't care much. He opened the door and walked in. Inside the room, Red Devil was leaning back on the sofa, with Judy standing by the window, with a glass of wine in her hand. As soon as she saw Li Yan come in, Judy said, DM. What kind of weapon do you need? I'll have Red Devil prepare it for you." Li Yan silently thought. So, that's Trong Vin Min's backer. It seems like I'll have to fight with weapons. Li Yan took the cigarette that Red Devil offered him and said, "Brother Red Devil, you don't have to nag me like that. I know my own health very well." Red Devil asked, "You met Tai Tuesday?" Li Yan nodded, "Yes." Red Devil lit a cigarette for himself, took a long drag, and said, "When Tai Tuesday watched you fight, she said you were weak. And that you might have a terminal illness. You have something you don't want to tell me. I don't mind. But you've only been in the city for a little over 10 days. And I don't want to have to clean up your mess so soon. If you're really not feeling well, take a break. I'll talk to Judy." Li Yan silently took a long drag of his cigarette. Then you looked at Red Devil and said with a faint smile, "Brother Red Devil, you're too kind to survive in this city." Red Devil raised his bottle towards Li Yan and said. Tai Tuesday said the same thing. Don't change the subject. I'm serious. Tai Tuesday said that if you keep going like this, your body won't be able to handle it. Li Yan suddenly asked, "Brother Red Devil, will Tai Tuesday come to watch my fight tomorrow?" Red Devil clinked glasses with Li Yan and said, "Maybe. Maybe not. It depends on her schedule." Li Yan tilted his head back and drank half a bottle of beer. He wiped the foam off his lips and looked at Red Devil. He said, "Then, make her watch me finish this match." After dinner with Red Devil, Li Yan went back to his house as usual. But every time he passed by, he could smell that unpleasant odor. The smell of the underground fish egg processing plant. He just couldn't get used to it. More importantly, he felt that the smell had been getting stronger in the past 2 days. But he didn't think much of it. He quickly went back to his house to rest. But as soon as he closed the door, he heard a knock. It was Atu. Li Yan opened the door and looked at her. He asked, "What's up? It's so late." Atu was holding a food container in her hand. She said, "Brother DM. My mom heard that you live alone. So she made you some char siu. Thank you for taking care of me." Li Yan nodded and said with a smile, "Thank your mom for me. She always seems to know when I haven't eaten enough. And tells you to bring me food. This has happened several times already. Your mom is a great cook." As he was speaking, Li Yan suddenly remembered something. He asked Atu, "By the way, Atu, I've noticed that your house hasn't been turning on the lights at night lately. You've been using candles. Is your light broken?" Atu fiddled with her fingers and said awkwardly, "Yes. The wiring has been broken for a long time." Li Yan suggested, "How about this? I come to your house and see if I can fix it. I haven't met your mother yet." He picked up the food container and started walking towards Atu's house. Atu was startled and quickly turned to look at Li Yan. She said with a smile, "That's okay. Thank you for your kindness, Brother DM." Li Yan looked back at her, although he felt that something was wrong. Atu had said no, so he didn't insist. After giving him the food, Atu went back to her house. After she entered, Li Yan opened the food container that Atu had given him. Inside were several pieces of char siu, neatly arranged and marinated to perfection. There was also a layer of steaming hot rice underneath. Li Yan took a bite. He suddenly felt that life in the city wasn't so bad. It was even better than he had expected. After giving Li Yan the food, Atu went back to her house. From inside Atu's house, a weak, whispering voice came. Atu, you're back. The light suddenly disappeared from Atu's face, as if she were possessed by something. June 24th, Year of the Fire Tiger. A ritual is held for a peaceful burial. Another day at the arena. Another match took place. It was a match that most martial arts enthusiasts were praising. Li Yan stood in the rain, a sharp sword in his hand. Li Diam was warming up. One look at his sword, and you could tell it was no ordinary weapon. It seemed to have a hidden dragon within. He held the Han sword in his hand. 8 characters were engraved on the blade. Qi Shan Wanjiang. Huan Cheng Kulong. Qi Shan Wanjiang. Huan Cheng Kulong. This was a good sword indeed. And in his hand, it exuded an indescribable aura of dominance. Judy looked at Hong Gue beside her and asked curiously. Ah Hong. Where did you get this sword? Is it any good? Hong Gue replied. Don't worry, Sister Judy. This is from Tai Sui's personal collection. A sharp weapon. It's seen blood before, no problem. Judy glanced upwards. At the stage. Even YouTube was here to watch the fight today. She looked at Li Diem on the stage. Han swords are heavy and consume a lot of stamina. Given his condition, he shouldn't be able to last long. But after their encounter, Judy knew this guy wasn't an idiot who would willingly walk into a death trap. She started to doubt her initial judgment. On the other side, Li Diem's opponent, Zhang Yuanming, stepped onto the stage. He was still wearing his usual attire, but this time without the mask. Zhang Yuanming removed his cloak and held a long-stemmed pipe in his hand. Through a glimpse of brilliance, Li Diem saw that Zhang Yuanming's ancient martial arts proficiency was 81%. He was 12% behind. But Li Diem believed that nothing was absolute. He might not lose today. They bowed to each other. Zhang Yuanming from the Qiji sect and Li Diem from Hejiang. As soon as they finished bowing, Zhang Yuanming gripped the pipe with one hand, bent his knees slightly, and shot forward. He charged at Li Diem. He was the first to attack. His movements swift and smooth. Like a soaring eagle, Li Diem assumed a defensive stance and aimed at Zhang Yuanming's wrist, which was holding the pipe. But Zhang Yuanming showed no sign of stopping. He swung the pipe downwards. His movements were as fast and decisive as an arrow. Li Diem didn't dodge. The result was that Zhang Yuanming's wrist was hit. Li Diem's sword-wielding hand moved slightly. The blade sliced through the air, aiming for Zhang Yuanming's wrist. In a fight, an injured limb was a critical weakness. Zhang Yuanming didn't flinch. He quickly twisted the pipe in his hand. From within the pipe, a small blade emerged. As Zhang Yuanming twisted, it grazed Li Diem's cheek, leaving a shallow wound. Li Diem frowned. His face was momentarily stained with blood. He made a quick decision. He thrust his left hand forward, striking Zhang Yuanming's wrist, disarming him. Seizing the opportunity, Li Diem swung the Han sword again. The sharp blade in purple light reflected in Zhang Yuanming's eyes. The blade was aimed at Zhang Yuanming's throat. Li Diem swung his sword, drawing an arc in the air. Zhang Yuanming dodged to the side. It was like a reflex. He narrowly escaped and quickly retreated, not daring to hesitate. Li Diem held the Han sword in one hand and Zhang Yuanming's long-stemmed pipe in the other. He looked at Zhang Yuanming coldly. You're disarmed. Let's see how you fight now. The fight had just begun, but the pace was incredibly fast. Li Diem exhaled. His eyes were cold as he looked at Zhang Yuanming. Zhang Yuanming was struggling. Blood dripped from his feet. He had escaped the fatal blow. But his face was pale. And his breathing was ragged. His arm had a deep gash, blood flowing from it. It was clear that this was a serious injury. Inside the observation room, Ami and Hashan Hong were watching the fight. But this time, Hashan Hong looked like he had swallowed a bone. He was fuming. His expression showed that he was furious. In contrast to Hashan Hong's anger, Judy just smiled gently. As expected of Li DM. Back in the arena, Zhang Yuanming had retreated. But he barely had time to catch his breath. Li DM seized the opportunity and charged at him. His large figure shot forward like an arrow. But his speed didn't affect his precision and his strength. He swung the Han sword. In an arc this time, he aimed for Zhang Yuanming's waist. But Zhang Yuanming leapt into the air to dodge. In midair, Zhang Yuanming's small stature gave him an advantage. He swiftly kicked at Li DM's head. Li DM didn't panic. He leaned back, using his left hand as support. His body dropped, dodging Zhang Yuanming's kick. He swung the Han sword horizontally, cutting off Zhang Yuanming's movement. Zhang Yuanming instinctively dodged the danger. Just as the Han sword was about to hit him, he twisted his body in midair. He spun around, avoiding Li DM's attack. But Li DM wasn't going to let him go. As soon as Zhang Yuanming landed, Li DM charged forward. He swung the Han sword downwards towards Zhang Yuanming's neck. Zhang Yuanming gasped and instinctively tilted his head. He narrowly avoided being decapitated. But his shoulder was deeply cut. It looked painful. Despite his injury, Zhang Yuanming gritted his teeth and attacked Li DM. Li DM was currently in the lead. His senses were heightened as he carefully observed his opponent. Seeing Zhang Yuanming charging towards him, he shouted, "You're dead." He slammed the Han sword into the ground. The heavy Han sword, combined with Li DM's strength, created a large crater in the stage. Li DM used the tip of the sword as support and twisted his wrist. The sword swept across Zhang Yuanming's waist. Zhang Yuanming seemed to have anticipated this move. He leapt into the air and landed on the blade, forcing Li DM's sword into the ground. Dust and debris flew everywhere. Zhang Yuanming didn't seem to be at a disadvantage. He was at least on par with Li DM. Suddenly, Zhang Yuanming's eyes changed. A fiery glow emanated from his eyes. A faint image of a strange beast. Reflected in them, this must be Zhang Yuanming's underworld inheritance. Inheritance. Zhang Yuanming held the pipe and pressed down on the Han sword. He straightened his body and kicked Li DM in the neck. His kick was incredibly powerful. Not something you'd expect from someone so small to deliver. Li DM couldn't dodge in time. He took the full force of Zhang Yuanming's kick. His head was ringing, like he had been hit by a hammer. That familiar voice spoke again. "You are facing the power of an awakened beast." Li DM spat out a mouthful of blood. The voice asked, "You have obtained some information. Viewing the information will cost 1 DM fu point. Do you want to view it?" Li DM's eyes widened. Of course he chose to view it. Li DM's vision changed. It was like everything was in slow motion. Zhang Yuanming was spinning and delivering another kick in midair. The Han sword was falling from his hand. Li DM stepped back slightly. Zhang Yuanming landed and assumed a stance. This next kick was aimed at Li DM's face. A glimpse of brilliance had identified Zhang Yuanming's technique and the power he was using. It was called Inner Spirit. Awakened Beast Inheritance. Quality: rare. Can only be obtained by completing underworld events. Cannot be purchased. Purchased. Characteristic: every movement carries the power of an awakened beast. Each attack burns the opponent's soul. Can be attached to any weapon. But ranged attacks are only 30% effective compared to melee attacks. Li Dian frowned as he stared at the information in front of him. It felt like a long time had passed. But it had only been a moment. The Han sword fell from Li Dian's hand and clattered to the ground. He was knocked back. His arm felt numb. Zhang Yuanming landed on the other side. He was still full of energy. Not giving Li Dian a chance to rest, Zhang Yuanming attacked again. From mid-air, his legs seemed to be aiming for Li Dian's neck. He twisted his waist and delivered a devastating kick. Li Dian was sent flying, crashing into a pillar in the corner of the stage. He looked at Zhang Yuanming. Although he was momentarily at a disadvantage, Li Dian quickly regained his composure. His body trembled. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. Li Dian frowned and stared at Zhang Yuanming. His usual attire was now stained with dirt and blood. On the other side, Zhang Yuanming's legs trembled slightly. It seemed that using this technique was taking a toll on him. Zhang Yuanming was also injured. He stared at Li Dian, observing him and trying to catch his breath. The Han sword lay in front of Zhang Yuanming. He stomped on the ground, aiming for the gap between the blade and the ground, and kicked it into the air. Zhang Yuanming caught the Han sword. His eyes were bloodshot. Maintaining this state was not easy for him. He shot forward like a bullet, thrusting the Han sword at Li Dian. Li Dian instinctively raised his hand. Sweat dripped down his face. The tide of the battle had turned in an instant. This was the power of an underworld inheritance. Li Dian's eyes grew even colder. Like the king of hell himself. He calmly watched the sword coming towards him. He thought, if he could, he would cripple his own right hand. He calculated everything. No matter how powerful the awakened beast's power was, it had to hit him first. Zhang Yuanming leapt across the stage. His movements were swift and graceful. His footwork was unpredictable. Li Dian's senses were heightened. He moved quickly and assumed a defensive stance. His footwork was fluid. As he dodged the Han sword's attack, Li Dian was using the 8 trigrams poem. The 12 variations of flowing steps. Zhang Yuanming barely had time to swing the sword before Li Dian closed the distance. The Han sword was too heavy for Zhang Yuanming's small frame, and he wasn't skilled in swordsmanship. He was struggling against Li Dian. Zhang Yuanming realized the danger he was in. His breath hinged. His heart pounded in his chest. I'm done for. Li Dian struck Zhang Yuanming in the chest. It felt like his ribs were broken. Zhang Yuanming stumbled back. But Li Dian wasn't done. He used his signature move, the retreating kick. He kicked Zhang Yuanming's ankle, not giving him a moment's respite. Li Dian assumed another stance, raising his hand and striking at the falling Zhang Yuanming. Once again, Li Dian slammed his fist into Zhang Yuanming's chest, sending him crashing to the ground. The force of the impact cracked the ground. Zhang Yuanming coughed up blood. His face was pale. Li Dian showed no mercy. He pinned Zhang Yuanming's shoulder to the ground. His other hand slid down Zhang Yuanming's arm to where he was holding the Han sword. He swiftly snatched it and then thrust it downwards at the young man before him, aiming for his throat. Blood splattered. Li Dian held the Han sword, his face grim. The spectators in the audience held their breath. Silence filled the arena. Judy, who was watching from her room, felt a strange excitement. Her face flushed. Her breathing quickened after a long moment. Someone in the audience finally reacted. And the rest followed suit. They all started yelling. Damn, he lost. That kid. Where's his momentum now? Fight, fight. King Yama is awesome. On the stage, Zhang Yuanming was lucky to be alive. Li Dian had no intention of killing him. So the Han sword had only grazed him before being thrust into the ground. Zhang Yuanming stared at Li Dian in disbelief. He couldn't believe what had happened. Li Dian pulled out the Han sword and looked at Zhang Yuanming coldly. As he lay on the ground, he asked, Who is Zhang dousing to you? Zhang Yuanming was confused. And scared. But he still answered truthfully. She's my sister. Hearing this, Li DM tossed the Han sword aside. And grabbed Zhang Yuanming by the collar. His entire body radiated a chilling aura. As he looked at Zhang Yuanming coldly. You broke my right hand. He said. If it doesn't heal within a month, there will be hell to pay. I should kill you right now to vent my anger. Li DM lifted Zhang Yuanming up. And tossed him off the stage. Zhang Yuanming's body flew through the air. Crashing through the ropes and landing on the ground below. He slammed into the wall. But didn't care about Li DM's attitude. He was just glad that he wasn't killed in the arena. He was lucky to be alive. More importantly, he was more interested in Li DM's question. Holding his injured arm, Zhang Yuanming approached Li DM and asked, how did you know the retreating kick of the Chocoboon? Li DM stood up, holding his broken right hand, and limped down from the stage. Hearing Zhang Yuanming's question, he gritted his teeth in pain and looked at Zhang Yuanming coldly. Go ask your sister, he said. Zhang Yuanming stared at Li DM. Confused. Huh? What does that mean? This guy is weird. In the lounge, Honggue sat on the sofa. Seeing the result of the fight, he breathed a sigh of relief. Watching that guy fight is enough to give me a heart attack, he muttered. But his relief was short-lived. Judy, sitting next to him, called out. Her voice strangely strained. Goosebumps erupted across Honggue's skin as he looked at her. Judy's face was flushed. And she was drenched in sweat. As if she had just finished a strenuous workout. Her breathing was rapid and ragged. And she fidgeted in her seat. Her eyes were glazed over. Honggue, she said slowly. Get out. And close the door behind you. Watching Li DM fight had become her new obsession. In the bathroom, Li DM was shirtless. Sweat plastering his body. With trembling hands, he gripped the faucet, letting the water run, mixed with the blood that trickled from his wounds. He gritted his teeth, gingerly touching the spot where Zhang Yuanming had kicked him. Even the lightest touch made the muscles in his face tense up. Tendons stood out on his face and neck. And his body twitched in pain. Li DM's breaths were heavy, ragged. He scowled at his reflection in the mirror. His dark eyes cold and ruthless. He looked a mess. The sink was splattered with blood. And discarded. Bloody bandages lay scattered on the floor. The fight had been brutal. Zhou Dueidao, leaning against the wall, watched Li DM. When you dropped your sword, he chuckled. I really thought you were going to lose. I really thought you were going to lose. Li DM braced himself against the sink, washing the blood off his hands and the porcelain surface. He prepared an ice pack for his wounds to dull the throbbing pain, and asked, You're not just here to watch me fight, are you? Who are you fighting next? Zhou Dueidao replied. There are 4 hot fighters in the arena right now. Besides you, me, and the 2 who just lost, there's one more kid. You mean Sim? Li DM turned around, a strained chuckle escaping his lips. Be careful not to underestimate him. Zhou Dueidao grinned confidently. Take care of your injuries. I don't want to fight you when you're not at your best. Your swordsmanship is impressive. I'm looking forward to experiencing it for myself when you're fully recovered. Li DM turned back to look at Zhou Dueidao, sizing him up. This kid is stubborn. Cold on the outside but warm on the inside. In his youth, he was involved in gang fights. So he has a lot of fighting experience. He even developed his own unique fighting style. Tai Sui said Zhou Dueidao is extremely talented. She thinks highly of him. Experts like Xiao Zhou are rare. Li DM continued to evaluate Zhou Dueidao silently. He nodded to himself, a small smile playing on his lips, making Zhou Dueidao a little uncomfortable. If you have something to say, just say it. Li DM, his face regaining some color after applying the ice pack, looked at Zhou Dueidao and chuckled. Alright, he said, I'll show you something even more interesting then. Zhou Dueidao didn't have a chance to respond. A knock on the door interrupted them, announcing that the next fight was about to begin. Zhou Dueidao turned to leave, feeling like he had unfinished business. But duty called, and he couldn't linger. He looked back at Li Diam over his shoulder, his expression serious. Gongsun Yen, he said, his voice low. Gongsun Yen, he said, his voice low. Zhang Yiji was no true gentleman. With that, he closed the door behind him, leaving Li Diam staring after him, bewildered. Zhou Duweitao's words sounded strange. A possible explanation came to mind. And it didn't please Li Diam. Something about, wealth can't corrupt. Power can't bend. Poverty can't break. Why couldn't he just say what he meant? Why did he have to sound like some kind of intellectual? This guy must think he had sold himself to duty. The thought made Li Diam chuckle. A gangster lecturing him about integrity. But that was Zhou Duweitao for you. Outside the arena, people were gathered, discussing the next fight. A young man asked his companions, "Who do you think will win?" "That guy with the tiger tattoo is really sharp. His moves are lightning fast." His companions nodded in agreement. "His opponent is just a student," one said. "He's got that pretty boy look. Like those actors in those cheesy dramas." A bald man sitting nearby shook his head. "I heard that student isn't easy to beat." Meanwhile, Zhou Duweitao was stretching and warming up below the rain. Sam grinned at his friends. "This is Xiao Zhou, my best fighter. He's never lost a fight." The referee approached Zhou Duweitao, a smile on his face. "Xiao Zhou, don't say I didn't warn you. Your opponent this time is not easy." All of his opponents in the last 10 fights ended up either dead or crippled. "Don't hold back." Zhou Duweitao nodded with a smile. "I never hold back. I just don't kill them, that's all." Zhou Duweitao's weapon for this fight was a sharp, curved saber. His opponent, Kong Tianxi, stepped onto the ring and grinned at him. "Let me make something clear," he said. "Once you step into this ring, life and death are on the line." The speaker was a young man with delicate features. Delicate features. Looking innocent and youthful. But his words were arrogant. And his expression was cocky. Zhou Duweitao didn't reply. He simply bowed silently, following the Du family boxing etiquette. Kong Tianxi returned the bow, mirroring Zhou Duweitao's posture. He then performed a Wing Chun salute. The atmosphere in the arena was electric. The crowd roared. And Zhou Duweitao, saber in hand, was the first to attack. Kong Tianxi, however, maintained his grin. His grin. Watching his opponent intently. After patching himself up, Li Diam didn't return to the arena to watch Zhou Duweitao fight. Instead, he went to the infirmary where Zhang Yuanming was lying. As he pushed the door open, he said in a deadpan tone, so serious that it was hard to tell if he was joking or not. "Wow, you're tough. You're still alive after losing so much blood?" The nurse who was tending to Zhang Yuanming, his body covered in bandages and casts, looked up at Li Diam ignored the nurse's stares. He leaned down to examine Zhang Yuanming's wounds. "They're so deep I can almost see your bones," he remarked. "Does it hurt?" "They're so deep I can almost see your bones," he remarked. "Does it hurt? Does it hurt?" The other nurse was still touching Zhang Yuanming's cast, staring at Li Diam in shock, forgetting to withdraw her hand. Zhang Yuanming had a thermometer in his mouth. And he looked at Li Diam with a complex expression. He was completely immobile. And this guy had the audacity to come here and make light of his injuries. After a moment, the nurse removed the thermometer from Zhang Yuanming's mouth. Li Diam looked at her. "I need to talk to him. Would you mind stepping outside?" The nurse nodded and left the room, still looking worried. She glanced back at the room. Li Diam looked back at her and gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, everything will be fine. Don't worry, everything will be fine." The door closed, leaving only the two of them in the room. Li Diam's expression turned cold. He held out his hand to Zhang Yuanming. "The fragment." Zhang Yuanming sighed, exasperated. "You're so cold. But even if I lose, I won't give it to you." TMV lay in bed, frowning at Li Yan. "My whole body is in casts. My left arm is broken. And you slashed a 40-centimeter wound on my right arm. You don't have to be so cruel as to make me get it for you myself." Li Yan reached into TMV's shirt and started searching. He asked impatiently, "Where is it?" TMV said irritably, "Lower." Li Yan continued searching in frustration. He said, "It's not there." TMV was just as frustrated as he was. What's wrong with this guy? He had to restrain himself from yelling, "Lower, it's right there." Li Yan finally found the fragment. He opened it and checked to make sure it was real. Then he asked casually, "Where did you get this?" TMV replied nonchalantly, "I got lucky. I bought it for 2,000 yuan from Loihang pawnshop. There was a junkie who was high, and he took advantage of the darkness to kill some unlucky guy in Kowloon Tuntrai. He stole the fragment from him and sold it to the pawnshop. If you want to know more, you'll have to ask the junkie. As for the other fragment, I stole it from Lin Tan headquarters. Do you believe that?" As he said this, a proud smile spread across TMV's face. He was provoking Li Yan. At the same time, outside the arena, the atmosphere was lively and noisy with cheers. Chao Dui Dao seemed to be at a disadvantage. The young man was incredibly agile. He jumped back several steps in midair without losing his balance. Tu Tian-tu held his twin blades and looked at Chao Dui Dao with a smirk. His face was filled with the arrogance of a teenager. Chao Dui Dao frowned. He stared at Tu Tian-tu and observed his movements. He charged forward. Their fight seemed to be very intense. The sound of weapons clashing rang out. It was a numbing fight. With his agility, Chao Dui Dao slashed at Tu Tian-tu repeatedly. But Tu Tian-tu was no slouch. He was just as fast and blocked all of Chao Dui Dao's attacks. He even managed to find an opening in Chao Dui Dao's saber strikes and counterattacked. Chao Dui Dao was startled. It's like aiming for the center of his eye. To hit like that. Chao Dui Dao quickly dodged to the side to avoid it. Tu Tian-tu is truly a Wing Chun practitioner. Every move he makes is extremely dangerous. More precisely, this man is extremely eager to win. So he doesn't hesitate to hurt others. It's not by chance that he inflicts pain so easily. Just after slashing past Chao Dui Dao, Tu Tian-tu twists his body, turns around, gains momentum and slashes again towards Chao Dui Dao. Fortunately, Chao Dui Dao managed to block this time. The more Chao Dui Dao fights, the more his weakness is revealed. Meanwhile, Tu Tian-tu remains extremely calm. Cold eyes. As if he didn't come here to fight, but to kill. The sound of weapons clashing echoed continuously. The two charged towards each other. Both sides, attacking and defending, were completely focused on the fight. Everyone around was silent, watching. This is really terrifying. 20.21, this guy slashed 21 times. You're kidding, right? Chao Dui Dao raised his saber and struck down. But Tu Tian-tu blocked it with his own saber. It seems that Chao Dui Dao is no pushover either. Tu Tian-tu also had to strain his mind. It was difficult to deal with this guy. The two of them continued to use their sabers, attacking each other at their fastest speeds. Tu Tian-tu moved flexibly, blocking Chao Dui Dao's attacks. Chao Dui Dao seemed to put all his weight into his saber, striking down repeatedly. But he wasn't lacking in agility either. At this moment, Tu Tian-tu suddenly attacked and quickly retreated. Chao Dui Dao immediately chased after him. From the outside, it seemed like he had the upper hand. Or maybe they were evenly matched. Chao Dui Dao was slashed on the corner of his lips. If he hadn't dodged in time, that slash would have been fatal. On the other hand, for Chao Dui Dao, Tu Tian-tu only suffered a horizontal slash on his stomach. At least he could still fight. Tu Tian-tu held the twin sabers in his hands, his body retreating towards the edge of the rain. His clothes were torn, and fresh blood dripped from the wound. Chao Dui Dao didn't miss the opportunity, and immediately rushed forward to continue the attack. Tu Tian-tu, however, remained incredibly calm, watching Chao Dui Dao charge at him. A plan quickly formed in his mind. It was as if his body acted instinctively, in sync with his true intentions. Purple flashed. A chilling, murderous aura. A bloody red appeared. And then, in an instant, Chao Dui Dao's hand holding the saber was severed. Blood splattered. This was the true nature of Tu Tian-tu. A person completely devoid of martial virtue. Chao Dui Dao, stripped of his weapon, didn't give up, and continued to charge forward. with the intent to kill. The twin sabers in 2TN2's hands slashed across Chao Dui Dao's stomach, as if returning the favor from earlier. Blood splattered, staining 2TN2's twin sabers. It was as if a chilling, bloody aura emanated from them, as if they had already tasted the blood of many. Chao Dui Dao couldn't believe his eyes. His heart seemed to stop beating. This 2TN2, after acting in such a despicable manner, smirked slightly. Back in the infirmary, the story of Li DM and TMV continued. Of course, there's nothing I wouldn't dare take. Li DM put the shard away. TMV hesitated, then asked with a chuckle. Don't you already have 2 pieces? Where did you get this one? Li DM replied nonchalantly, as if it were no big deal. There were 5 shards stolen by a group of robbers from a bank vault. I killed them. TMV was stunned, as if struck by lightning. His mind raced, trying to process the information. Bad guys can't peel fruit and rob banks with knives, even with the Enlightenment inheritance. Facing those exiled gun experts, you might not stand a chance. How could this Hades single-handedly pull it off? Don't tell me. Aren't newbies no different from ordinary people? How? This is strange. Li DM was about to leave when he suddenly remembered something. So he turned back to TMV and asked. Oh, right. This isn't your first time participating in the Hades event, is it? Right. TMV nodded and said, second time. Li DM frowned upon hearing that and asked. A fat guy brought you in? Li DM was referring to Mac. TMV froze for a moment before shaking his head and saying, no. The one who brought me in was a very beautiful girl. Unforgettable. When he reminisced, the young man's face even flushed a little pink. Enough to understand how beautiful that girl was. Li DM fell silent after hearing that. His expression pensive. He looked up at TMV and asked. After completing the Hades event, what do you get when being brought here? Mac was in such a hurry that he couldn't answer clearly. He still had many unanswered questions in his mind. But TMV was quite enthusiastic. As soon as Li DM finished asking, he started explaining. Completing the Hades event for the first time, you'll definitely receive a Hades inheritance. Like my enlightenment beast. Never having possessed it. You can't understand the feeling of extraordinary power. This transcendental feeling. Li DM was getting impatient. He took out a cigarette, lit it, and said. Get to the point. Why so much rambling? If it were really that useful, I would be the one lying there. TMV was truly beyond frustrated. This guy was asking for a beating. But he couldn't refute it. TMV gritted his teeth and said irritably. If I hadn't taken that Han sword, who knows who would have one? And who would have lost? Li DM said indifferently. You're bedridden, why bother? Tormenting yourself like this, am I right? Enough with the nonsense, back to business. Li DM asked again. And then what? TMV lay on the bed, looking at Li DM and answered honestly. After completing the Hades event, all your actions will be tallied. The higher the evaluation after tallying, the more Hades points you earn. And the higher your purchase authority. Now Li DM was a little interested. He looked at TMV and asked, what's purchase authority? Is it like that blood cell-S medicine? That can cure me. TMV said helplessly. In the previous Hades event, I was in western Hunan, southern China, 13th, a graveyard near Mount Fenghuang. Experienced a final transformation. The local warlord used cannons to raze the entire cemetery to the ground. In the final purchase authority, I saw things like exorcism spells. Even, there were books on creating all sorts of super zombies. Like purple stiff, blood stiff. But I didn't have enough Hades points. Not even enough for a white stiff. As for purple stiff, it was completely dark. I couldn't afford it. It's not about the points. If you can't buy it, it's probably because you don't have enough purchase authority. At this point, Li DM recalled his previous encounter with Mac. He said I could give you something better. Maybe he was referring to this. Although he didn't show it on the outside. In reality, he was extremely anxious. It's just that relying on others is better than relying on yourself. Li DM asked again. How to increase my purchase authority? Most effectively. TMV said coldly. If you ask me the most effective way, it's to kill. Li DM unconsciously fiddled with the cigarette in his hand. He stared at TMV, not lying at all. Kill how? Haha, he exhaled a puff of smoke and fell silent. TMV looked at Li DM and said calmly, that's right. Probably in about an hour or two. My enlightenment beast's power will disappear. Your right arm will be fine. Li DM felt a little relieved. He still had a few tough fights in Nine Dragon City. To run, it would be extremely troublesome if his right arm were to be crippled. This can be considered good news. There's one more thing I need to ask. Li DM stood up, looking at TMV. His voice cold as he asked the final question. Have you been playing cat and mouse with me these past few days? Haven't you? TMV looked at Li DM in bewilderment. From his expression, it was clear he didn't understand the question. Li DM stared at TMV. Not missing any single expression on his face. TMV felt suffocated under Li DM's intense gaze. He stammered, I don't understand what you're saying. It definitely wasn't me. Li DM didn't listen to TMV's affirmations. After all, observing his expression earlier was enough to know that the person wasn't TMV. TMV saw Li DM about to leave. So he quickly raised his head and blurted out, what's your relationship with my sister? This question had been on his mind since the fight. Li DM said coldly, ex-lover. TMV was so angry that he wanted to run over and punch Li DM. But he couldn't move at all. And Li DM had already walked out the door. Infuriating. Outside, Li DM walked slowly. The city lights outside the window shone on him. Gorgeous Li DM walked slowly. As he walked, he thought to himself, this kid is quite resilient. It took 3 of us, with our punches and kicks, to incapacitate him. Such terrifying physical qualities are probably thanks to the Hades inheritance. As he was walking, Li DM's phone suddenly rang. He took out his phone and saw that it was Red Devil calling. Li DM stopped, looked out the window, and said, What's up, Red Devil? As soon as Li DM answered the phone, the person on the other end said quickly, DM. Go to the arena and escort a young man out of the building. From the back door, take the stairs. If anyone gets in your way, kill them for me. Li DM was a little surprised. It was Tai Sui who called, only Deep Tiger. Since that was the case, he had no choice but to rush over immediately. This must be something important. Flower Snake 9 had taken off his suit jacket. He was wearing, revealing his muscular physique and the peony tattoo on his chest. He looked at Yushu and Red Devil standing in front of him, gritted his teeth and said with suppressed anger, if I don't kill him today, no one is leaving this place. It seems the 2TN2 had truly angered Flower Snake 9. He even brought a bunch of people to surround them. His eyes were cold, as if he wanted to tear them apart. The once gentle person was now filled with rage. His veins and tendons were bulging, facing the fierce and aggressive group of people that Flower Snake 9 brought. Yushu remained remarkably calm. There was still a trace of wine at the corner of her mouth. She looked at him and exclaimed, Wow, Flower Snake 9, you're something else. Surrounding us with hundreds of people. People come to Dragon City to watch fights, not to watch gang wars. What do you want? If you want to cause trouble, at least know who you're dealing with. At this moment, Li DM arrived. Seeing the crowd, he couldn't understand what was going on. He walked towards Red Devil and asked urgently, Brother. Red Devil, what's going on? Why did things escalate so quickly? Red Devil puffed on his cigarette, his expression grim. He looked at Li DM and whispered, Little Chow lost. His right hand was severed, his stomach 2 slashes, his guts spilled out. He was taken to the hospital by Flower Snake 9's men. Then the people from the winning side started causing trouble. Li DM looked at the bloodstains in the arena. His face was gloomy, and it was unclear what he was thinking. He was quite close to Chow Dui Dao after all. From the beginning to the end, Flower Snake 9 had been trying his best to suppress his anger, not immediately rushing forward. His eyes were sharp with hatred as he looked at Yu Shu, Chao Dui Dao, was truly a close friend of his. It would be strange if he wasn't angry. Li DM didn't think too much about it. He looked at Red Devil and said, Tai Sui told me. Red Devil said, wait a moment. He took a long drag and threw away his half-smoked cigarette. Then he urged Li DM to hurry up and follow him. He went ahead, leading Li DM deeper into the arena. Leaving the place where the group of people were standing and growling, Li DM turned to Red Devil and asked, Tai Sui asked me to take a young man out. Who is he? Red Devil said as he walked. You take that kid out of Nine Dragon City, to safety. Even if he dies, he can't die on our turf. They walked through several corridors, until finally, Red Devil stopped in front of a room. It looked like a storage room. A bit old. Inside the storage room, the light was dim, unable to illuminate the entire space. In the middle of the room, a young man was clutching his stomach, sitting on a chair. There were a few other wounds on his body, but none as serious as the one on his stomach. Even though it was bandaged, it was still bleeding. Li DM couldn't help but gasp. Based on what he had heard so far, it seemed likely that this young man was the one who fought Zhou Dui Dao. The young man sat on the chair, his hand trembling, as he held the cloth covering the wound on his stomach. But the blood wouldn't stop oozing, soaking a patch of his clothes. His breathing was a little ragged and uneven. Li DM walked up to 2TN2. Red Devil stood beside him. The young man seemed to realize someone had entered. He looked up. His eyes lit up when he saw Li DM. Despite being injured, he still had a bright smile on his face. He looked at Li DM and asked with a smile, "Are you Hades?" Li DM didn't really care about 2TN2's attitude. He asked coldly, "Can you walk on your own?" 2TN2 struggled to get up and said, "Of course." Li DM turned around and walked away coldly. 2TN2 clutched his wound and got to his feet, and followed behind Li DM. Red Devil took out a cigarette and watched them silently. The two walked in silence for a long stretch. Li DM seemed to have no intention of talking to this guy. They reached the stairs. 2TN2 clutched his wound and said with a smile, "I'm 2TN2. If I beat you, I won't have any rivals left in the rain, right?" Even though it hurt like hell, 2TN2's arrogance was evident on his face. He forced a painful smile and said, "I've been training for over a decade, but I haven't had a fight as good as the ones I've had in Dragon City these past few days. That little Chow was really strong. His 9-ring broadsword breaking surprised me. But I was still faster. Unfortunately, I'm still faster." Li DM was extremely annoyed with this kid. He suddenly stopped, a faint smile on his lips. He turned to look at 2TN2, who was clutching his stomach and struggling to walk down the stairs. He asked, "You said you practice traditional martial arts. Do you have any martial virtue?" 2TN2 burst out laughing. He replied without hesitation, "That's outdated." Li DM suddenly laughed loudly. Before 2TN2 could understand what was happening, Li DM dashed towards him, lifted his leg, and attacked with fierce momentum. The target was the wound on 2TN2's stomach. 2TN2 was caught off guard. He took the full force of the kick to his stomach, right on the wound from the slash. But Li DM controlled his strength. At least this kid wouldn't die on Yushu's turf. 2TN2 was sent flying a meter away, crashing into the wall. Blood splattered on the ground. Some whitewashed dust fell off. He clutched his wound, his whole body trembling. There were some garbage bags and old items scattered around that hadn't been collected yet. The scene was truly pathetic. This was what they called a world without martial virtue. With martial virtue, it's honorable and upright. Chow Chow reigns supreme. Without it, it's just like this. Li DM coldly turned to look at the trembling figure and said, "I think so too." He then threw 2TN2 a casual remark. "If you're not dead, get up. Do you want to be chopped into mincemeat by Hua Linsheng's men?" He turned and continued walking. 2TN2 tremblingly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The smile on his face finally disappeared completely. His eyes were filled with cold sharpness. He looked at Li DM and said, I'll definitely return this kick. Then he shakily followed behind Lee DM. Lee DM, on the other hand, didn't pay much attention to 2TN2's words. He walked on, saying indifferently, I'll be waiting. At that moment, his phone rang again. It was Judy calling. Lee DM's tone softened immediately. He answered, Sister Judy, what's up? On the other end of the line, Judy was soaking in a bathtub filled with rose petals. Relaxed. Enjoying the comforts of a wealthy woman. She looked at her nails, slightly resentful, and whined coquettishly. You devil, where have you been? Lee DM replied, Me, I'm taking care of some business. Behind him, 2TN2 gritted his teeth as he followed Lee DM. Listening to him talk on his expression was a little strange. Incredulous. Lee DM asked, Buy a car. Buy what car? At the door, two of Hua Lin Shang's men were waiting for Lee DM to come out. But he didn't notice them at all. He kept talking in the same tone to Judy on the other end. Sister Judy, you're so generous, why don't you just give me the cash? I don't need a house, I need money more. Lee DM walked right past the two men. He chuckled softly, Don't be silly, I wouldn't dare to have such audacity. The two thugs blocking the door overheard him and snorted contemptuously. Freeloader. 2TN2 was still clutching his wounded stomach, limping forward. His body was a bit stiff, though clearly tense. As expected, the two thugs suddenly stood up and looked at 2TN2. Hey, kid. One said, We're talking to you. Wait a minute. 2TN2's body stiffened, his heart rate spiking. Lee DM, who had been talking on the phone in front of him, suddenly dashed behind 2TN2. He might have disliked the kid, but he still had a mission to complete. Lee DM leapt into the air, grabbing the head of the thug who was smoking and slamming his knee into the guy's chin, sending him crashing to the ground. The other thug, with a shaved head, was startled. He instinctively reached for the knife strapped to his back. But before he could draw it, Lee DM attacked. He spun around and kicked the shaved head thug straight in the face, sending him flying into the wall, his teeth and lips a bloody mess. The knife in his hand clattered to the floor. Judy asked curiously on the other end. What was that noise? Lee DM replied nonchalantly, Just a noise. Well, I'm busy, of course there's going to be some noise. As he spoke, he bent down and picked up the knife that the shaved head thug had dropped. Hearing the commotion, the two thugs' other companions came running up the stairs, armed with weapons. Lee DM glanced at them coldly and cursed, Damn! You bastards! Such good hearing. He had forgotten that he was still on the phone with Judy. He said as he charged down the stairs. It's not like that, Sister Judy. I wasn't talking about you. With that, he tossed his phone to 2TN2. 2TN2 stumbled a bit, but managed to catch the phone. Down below, Lee DM jumped down from a height. The Walian Shang thugs gaped at him. He grabbed the railing to gain momentum and launched himself down, kicking the nearest thug in the face and sending him crashing backward. One down. Lee DM didn't even bother looking at the other two thugs. He was incredibly calm, his expression unchanged. As he charged at the next thug, his body leapt slightly, and he spun in midair, kicking the thug in the chest and sending him crashing into the wall. As for the last thug, Lee DM charged at him, knife in hand. He was moving too fast. These thugs couldn't react to his movements at all. And so, in just a few seconds, Lee DM used only punches and kicks to defeat all three armed thugs. This was the difference in strength. As for 2TN2, after Lee DM finished fighting, he limped down the stairs, clutching his wound. Yu Shu's phone was still playing Judy's impatient voice. DM, what the hell are you doing? Why is it so noisy over there? Do you hear me? 2TN2 raised the phone to his ear, dumbfounded, about to explain something. But Lee DM quickly walked over, snatching the phone from his hand. He glared at 2TN2, then said to the person on the phone in a gentle voice, I hear you, of course I hear you. Sister Judy, I'll be done soon. I hear you, of course, I hear you. Sister Judy, I'll be done soon. I'll call you later. 2TN2 looked at him 1,000 words on his lips. But he didn't know what to say. Lee DM hung up the phone. Then glanced at 2TN2 and said, "Let's go, hurry up." He quickened his pace. Outside, in the parking lot behind the arena, there was a gate chain shut. Several men were waiting there. One of them tossed his cigarette butt to the ground and ground it out with his foot. They had been waiting for a long time. A group of Hua Lin Shang's men were sitting there, armed with baseball bats. One of them looked at their leader and asked, "Brother Wu, we've been waiting here so long our asses are numb. Are we really going to wait for that guy?" The man called Brother Wu said coldly, "Shut up." The others didn't dare to say another word. A moment later, Lee DM and 2TN2 walked out. Wu looked up and said, "They're here." Lee DM walked ahead of 2TN2. A knife in his hand, his face grim and cold. 2TN2 followed obediently behind him. The men held their breath as they watched them approach. One of them said, "Brother Wu." "There's two of them. 2TN2's in the back." He looked around nervously. Lee DM, walking in front, was calm and collected, as if nothing had happened. He took out a cigarette and lit it. One of the men who had been lying in wait nearby said to the man next to him, "Ah Tai, didn't I tell you to find someone to get a gun, just in case?" "Where is it?" Ah Tai said sheepishly. "Brother Wu, getting a gun takes time. You were in such a hurry, I didn't." Basically, Ah Tai had also assumed that even though the kid was a martial artist, he must have been severely injured. He had seen with his own eyes. Little Chow's 9-ring broadsword slashed the kid's stomach. It must have been a serious wound. They didn't need a gun. They had over a dozen men. And they even had a machete. The kind used for hunting. There was no way they couldn't take care of this guy. At least, that was what they thought. They hadn't considered the fact that Tai Sui would have someone as skilled as Lee DM protecting 2TN2. Wu gritted his teeth as he watched them approach. Lee DM walked ahead, 2TN2 following behind, a knife in his hand, casually smoking a cigarette. He looked relaxed and unhurried. But he was like the Grim Reaper coming to collect a soul. Alright, this was the first time Wu had seen Hades in the flesh. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. Lee DM took a long drag from his cigarette and exhaled a cloud of smoke. His eyes were cold as he looked ahead. He might have looked vulnerable. But in reality, there were no openings. Wu turned to Ah Tai and asked through gritted teeth, "You couldn't find a gun?" Ah Tai stammered, No, sir." Wu closed his eyes, his body trembling with fear. Just looking at him was enough to make them feel pressured. The thug next to him was confused, still not understanding what was going on. After a moment of internal struggle, Wu finally ordered his men to retreat. And so, Lee DM completed the task that Yushu had given him. With ease. He escorted 2TN2 to the main road, without any interference. As he walked away, he said, "Call yourself a taxi. Be careful out there. Hualin Shang's men won't let this go." 2TN2 tilted his head and let out a sigh of relief. Muttering, "We sign a waiver before going on stage. Once you step into the ring, it's life or death. This guy's not playing by the rules at all." Lee DM said without turning back. "Unfortunately, not everything in this world makes sense. Hualin Shang wants you dead. They only need a reason. Not logic. Hualin Shang wants you dead. They only need a reason. Not logic." Despite his words, he couldn't help but smile a little. Lee DM had walked a good distance when 2TN2 suddenly shouted, 15 days. In 15 days. My wound will be healed." Lee DM didn't seem to hear him. He continued walking, not turning back. The colorful streetlights shone on him. 3 days later, at some headquarters, Red Devil stood outside the building, waving at someone carrying a bunch of stuff. Walking towards him. "Ah DM, over here." Lee DM walked over. He wasn't wearing his usual simple clothes today. Instead, he had on a dress shirt. A man in a white shirt, wearing a black vest outside. He has a watch on his wrist. His hair is slicked back neatly. He's carrying a lot of stuff. Red Ghost sees him like this. In smiles, exclaiming, "Nice new clothes. Just got back from a date with Judy?" Li Yan forces a smile and asks Red Ghost to put his things in the car. Then, they enter the building. As they walk, Li Yan asks, "Did Tai Sui call for me? Is the Hua Lian Shang matter settled?" Red Ghost turns his head, looks at Li Yan, puts his arm around him, and says with a smile, "There's no way Tai Sui couldn't handle it. After 3 days of trouble, those Hua Lian Shang remnants had to tuck their tails and run away." When Li Yan arrived, Uncle Yu was still working out in his private room. Several pieces of equipment were scattered on the floor. Uncle Yu was sitting on the weight machine, his upper body covered in sweat, his muscles clearly defined. It's truly an admirable physique. Contrary to Red Ghost, who's awkwardly looking away behind him. Li Yan walks casually towards his master and asks, "Tai Sui, did you call for me?" Uncle Yu stops exercising, looks at Li Yan, and says, "Except for TNTZ. On the launching arena, there's no one stronger than you, kid. They're just doing it for fun. No matter who wins or loses between the two of you, you'll definitely become the Thunderlord of the 6th arena in the future." Uncle Yu wipes the sweat off his face with a towel and looks at Li Yan with a smile. Of course, I had to pay a little more attention to the future pillar. After hearing this, the corners of Li Yan's mouth curve up slightly, and he cups his hands at Uncle Yu with a smile, saying, "Tai Sui, you flatter me. How am I qualified to be the Thunderlord? Besides, in the arena, swords and knives have no eyes. I just want to earn enough money to marry a wife and then return to my hometown to enjoy my old age." Red Ghost, upon hearing this, says, "That's a good plan. Stay here and fight for a few years. Then retire. Find a leisurely job at the funding building. Earn some commission. Isn't that better?" Uncle Yu picks up the water bottle and takes a big gulp before looking at Li Yan and asking, "You don't want to follow me?" Li Yan says with a smile, "Of course I do." Li Yan's words are half true and half false. After all, wanting to follow and actually following were two different things. After all, he wasn't from this world. If he were from this world, there would be nothing wrong with following Uncle Yu. Uncle Yu didn't ask any further about it. She just nodded and said, "All right then." However, her eyes were fixed on Li Yan, as if something was amiss. She put down the water bottle in her hand and said, "You guys are busy, go ahead. I still need to work out for a while." As they walked out the door, Li Yan picked up his bags. Red Ghost, walking next to him, let out a sigh of relief. Li Yan suddenly turned to Red Ghost and asked with a smile, "Red Ghost, do you know which hospital Xiao Zhou is in?" Red Ghost nodded with a smile and said, "You're really something." After all, there was nothing to hide between them. If Li Yan wanted to visit, Red Ghost had already guessed it. At the hospital where Zhou Wei Duo is. Flower Snake 9 also frequented this place to take care of his right-hand man. He sat by the bed, looking at Zhou Wei Duo and complaining in frustration. "Xiao Zhou, I think you were defeated by that kid. And you were so angry that you caused trouble at funning." "I didn't plan to do that." Suddenly sensing someone approaching, Flower Snake 9 stopped talking. Upon seeing Li Yan walk in, he snapped, "You still have the nerve to show your face here?" Li Yan sighed and said, "Brother 9, you're wrong. Every dead has its dead, or Xiao Zhou was injured. Last night, something happened at Tian Tis's camp. I was playing pachinko with pachinko all night outside the camp. No matter what. This can't be blamed on me." Flower Snake 9 walked up to Li Yan angrily, glaring at him. He yelled, "You're with Tai Sui." Li Yan calmly replied, "Tai Sui is with Tai Sui." Li Yan stares back at him. Flower Snake 9 yells, "You're with Tai Sui." Li Yan calmly replies, "Tai Sui is with Tai Sui. At most, I am just a fighter earning a living in her arena. Trading my life for money." Li Yan's tone softens a bit. He looks at Flower Snake 9 and asks, "Brother 9. If you don't mind, can the two martial artists have a word in private?" Zhou Wei Duo looks at Flower Snake 9, signaling for them to talk alone. Naturally, Flower Snake 9 has no reason to refuse. After all, this kid is still quite conscious. However, he's still furious and storms out. Li Yan pulls a chair over and sits beside the bed. He looks at Zhou Wei Duo and asks, "How's the injury? Any after effects?" Zhou Wei Duo looks out the window. He speaks slowly and calmly. "They reattached my arm in time. It'll probably ache when the weather changes. I had to stay in bed for half a year, nothing serious. Li Yan's heart sinks. Although Zhou Wei Duo makes it sound light. In reality, it is extremely painful. Especially for a martial artist. He silently peels the apple he brought. Zhou Wei was words. Having a broken arm once means Xiao Zhou won't be able to use his full strength anymore. Losing more than half of his skill is as good as being crippled. He cuts the apple into small pieces and arranges them on a plate. He hands it to Zhou Wei Duo and says, just withdraw. After this, whatever debts of gratitude you owe them are considered paid. Zhou Wei Duo reaches out to take a slice of apple and asks, is that all you came to say? Li Yan nods, making eye contact with Zhou Wei Duo. And says, that's right, that's all I came to say. Zhou Wei Duo looks at Li Yan, shakes his head, and asks with a smile. In my state, does it even matter if I withdraw or not? Does it make a difference? Li Yan remains silent. And uses a toothpick to pick up a piece of the apple he cut for the patient. He pops it into his own mouth. Zhou Wei Duo looks at him and smiles. Saying, worry about yourself. Li Yan stops the apple midway to his mouth. Then, he pops the apple slice into his mouth. And continues chewing. They talk for a while longer. Then Li Yan gets up. He turns to leave and says, I am going. You get some rest. Zhou Wei Duo suddenly calls out, Master Li. Li Yan stops at the door. Zhou Wei Duo suddenly says, thank you. Li Yan smiles faintly. And nods at Zhou Wei Duo. Then he goes outside. Flower Snake 9 is still leaning against the wall outside the door. Li Yan doesn't mind him. And raises his hand in greeting. They're just two ships passing in the night. Both are travelers far from home. Homesickness is not easy to overcome. Who can understand the sorrow of those who are far away from home? Li Yan sighs and takes out a cigarette out of habit. He takes a drag. His eyes gazing into the distance. Xiao Zhou has withdrawn. But he has to step into the rain. Less than 2 seconds later. A nurse walks up. And snatches the cigarette from his hand. She sternly reminds him, Sir. No smoking in the hospital. Li Yan twitches his mouth and forces a smile, saying, sorry. Sorry at the Wing Chun practical boxing gym. Inside the gym. Several shirtless disciples are practicing. Their bodies are drenched in sweat. Each one of them incredibly muscular. Tian Tizi is sitting on a chair. One leg propped up, watching them train. In front of him is a chessboard. Tian Tizi's grandfather places a white piece on the board. And says sternly, Tian Tizi, you must concentrate when you play chess. Tian Tizi puts his leg down. And looks up at his grandfather. Old Master Sui speaks slowly and calmly. I heard you went to the arena. And seriously injured a master of the Wenshang fist. And caused trouble. Again, Tian Tizi shows no remorse at all. After listening to his grandfather. He leans to the side. And sticks out his tongue playfully, showing that he doesn't care at all. He leans forward slightly, looks at old Master Sui, and says with a smile. Grandpa, you caused a lot of trouble in the past too. Didn't you? Old Master Sui scolds him helplessly, you brat. You dare talk back to me? Suddenly, he turns serious and says to Tian Tizi. Stop fighting. You're always. Tian Tizi interrupts. Once you're in the ring, you don't care about life or death. Some people step into the ring to make a living. These people die in the ring without any regrets. But you fight for the sake of winning. It's not worth it to die in the ring. Tian Tizi places a chess piece, frowns, and says, I've been training for over a decade. I never understood why I should train. Is it to improve my health or to defend the country? Why do we always have to defend? Why is Chinese martial arts always being challenged? Why do we have to wait for them to come to us and insult us before we slowly retaliate in our robes? Why do we have to wait for them to label us as the sick man of East Asia before we fight back? Why do we have to wait for them to insult Chinese martial arts before we say, we can't insult Chinese martial arts? I'm stronger than you. Why can't I compete? Why can't I challenge you? Challenge you until all of Hong Kong knows my name? Challenge you until they fear the words Wing Chun. Challenge you until they don't dare to be disrespectful anymore? Old Master Sui places a white piece on the board. His eyebrows raised slightly. This kid is truly a piece of iron that can't be forged into steel. He sighs and says, "You're young and naive. You don't know the immensity of the world." Tianzu places a piece, smiles calmly, and says, "Grandpa, I'm only 19. I can't be as old as you." Then he points to the board and says, "Grandpa, I win." Old Master Sui closes his eyes. Although he wants to say more, he decides not to. In the end, he just says, "If you lose, don't come to me." Tianzu gets up, turns his back on his grandfather, waves his hand, and says with a smile, "Once you're in the ring, you don't care about life or death." June 28, Bingyan Year, at a marriage proposal banquet. Nothing is taboo. At a wonton noodle restaurant. The waiters are busy. Even though the restaurant isn't crowded. Judy sits opposite Li Yan, watching him slurp his noodles, and asks angrily, "What did you say? Can you take back what you just said?" "I'll pretend it never happened. I bet millions on you every night. Buy you thousands of dollars worth of underwear. You treat me to an $80 bowl of noodles. A measly $80 bowl of wonton noodles, and then you break up with me?" Li Yan puts the empty bowl in front of Judy, then calmly wipes his mouth with a tissue. Judy stares at the man in front of her. No matter how she thinks about it, she can't figure out why he's doing this. It's infuriating. She sees Li Yan about to speak, thinking he's going to explain something. But he turns to the waiter and says, "One more bowl, please." Judy is so angry that she almost falls to the ground. "I can't take it anymore. This is outrageous." She slams the table and stands up, glaring at Li Yan. The other customers in the restaurant see this and start watching the drama unfold. Li Yan calmly smiles and says, "Sister Judy, don't get excited. This isn't like you." Judy frowns and says, "Listen. If I want to, I can throw you into the sea for the fish to eat. Tonight. I guarantee that tomorrow, the title, King of Hell, will disappear from Longcheng. Believe it or not." Li Yan takes out his lighter, lights a cigarette, and says, "Sister Judy, don't be like that. I'm scared. With this face, people would definitely believe me." He continues, "But let's be practical. I never let you lose any bets. You bought me clothes and watches. I packed them and sent them to your villa in Repulse Bay. I even paid for the shipping. We've been together for 20 days. If we're not compatible, we break up. We haven't slept together. No one is at a loss. Am I right?" Judy grits her teeth, her veins bulging. Li Yan's words are definitely not something a normal person would say. She grabs her purse, turns around, and walks away, muttering, "Fine, fine." Li Yan taps his cigarette, knocking the ash into the ashtray. He looks at Judy, a smile still on his face, and says, "Wait." Judy stops and glares at him. Li Yan smiles and says, "Martial artists know a bit of medicine. The calming prescription I gave you 2 days ago is a family secret remedy, very effective for insomnia and rapid heartbeat. You're angry, but it's your body. Take care of yourself. Whatever. The more I hear, the angrier I get. Why does he care so much after breaking up with me?" Judy wishes she could just run up and punch Li Yan a few times. She stomps off angrily, yelling, "I'm going to flush it down the toilet when I get home." After she leaves, Li Yan puts out his cigarette, which he only smoked halfway. He originally planned to kidnap Judy to avoid all this trouble. He pulls the bowl of wonton noodles closer to him, feeling extremely troubled now that he's broken up with his sugar mama. He has a big headache about money. Where will he find the remaining 2,050,000 per match? He'll have to fight 5 or 6 matches a day. What a pain. Li Yan recalls 2 days ago, when he had dinner with Red Ghost. As usual, Red Ghost nagged him like an old mother. "Don't live in that house on Shrimp Temple Road anymore. How can you sleep with the smell of salted fish downstairs? Move to the funding building. Air conditioning, alcohol, even women, you can have it all." At that time, Li Yan laughed and said, "I'm used to living there, I'm too lazy to move." Now, after finishing his wonton noodles, Li Yan returns home. He thinks about breaking up with Judy and sighs. He can only blame himself, not others. But time is running out. Li Yan walks and rubs his arms. It's warm and sunny outside, but as soon as he enters the alley, the temperature suddenly drops. He doesn't know why. Suddenly, a ginger cat walks up and rubs against Li Yan's legs, meowing a few times. Li Yan bends down and picks up the ginger cat. It's not his cat, but he knows it. Li Yan looks towards Asu's house. The door is unlocked. Maybe the cat ran out from there. So he opens the door, steps inside, and says, "Asu, your army ran out again." Li Yan pushes the door open again and calls for Asu one more time. The cat walks inside. But there's no one home. The lights aren't even on. The floor looks ancient. Li Yan walks into the house. Even in the dim light, he can see flies and bugs buzzing around. It's obvious that the living conditions here are far from normal. He glances towards the window. Army sees the flies buzzing near there and stares intently at them. Li Yan really doesn't understand why the fish factory smells so foul. Yet Asu's house is left wide open. Light from outside streams into the house. Army sits on an old, floral rug, licking its soft, orange fur. Li Yan walks over and carefully shuts the window. As the window clicks shut, Li Yan hears a noise behind him. In a split second, he senses a cold energy surge beside him. The temperature plummets to freezing. A woman appears behind him. Her face wrinkled and almost decayed. Her eyes sunken. Her skin looking nothing like the skin of a living person. It's pale and lifeless. The woman opens her mouth. Her voice is raspy, like a voice from beyond the grave. "Who are you looking for?" As she speaks, a foul odor emanates from her mouth. Incredibly unpleasant. Just then, Asu arrives back at her house. She runs into the house, flinging open the door in a panic. She doesn't know why, but she has a bad feeling. As she steps inside, she sees Li Yan standing on a stool, fixing a light bulb. Army is perched on his shoulder. Asu looks startled and a little scared. Li Yan finishes changing the bulb and says with a smile, "Your army ran outside. So I brought him back and thought I'd change the bulb for you while I was here." The light bulb flickers on. Asu's mom calls out from the kitchen. "Xiaoyan, stay and have dinner with us." Li Yan doesn't decline. He smiles and says, "All right, I wouldn't want to trouble you." The light now bright. Li Yan steps down from the stool. Army jumps from Li Yan's shoulder into Asu's arms. He looks at the girl and says, "Asu, here's 100 yuan, why don't you go buy some pork?" Seeing Li Yan getting along so well with her mother, Asu feels much more at ease. She hugs Army and says with a smile, "No need, we have some at home." She feels a ticklish sensation on her cheek as the cat licks her. Asu and her mother prepare everything quickly. Soon, a meal is ready, complete with soup, meat, and vegetables. A hot and hearty feast to welcome Li Yan. Asu's mother looks down at Li Yan and says with a smile, "I haven't thanked you, Xiaoyan, for always taking care of my daughter." Looking at Asu's mother now, although she doesn't seem as eerie as she did in the shadows, there's something about her that still makes Li Yan feel uneasy. But, of course, he keeps these thoughts to himself. He maintains his warm and friendly demeanor and says, "It's nothing. Your char siu is delicious. But it's weird. I closed the windows a while ago. Yet the place still smells like salted fish. Next time, you'll bring some incense to ward off any evil spirits." Asu, while eating, keeps stealing glances at Li Yan. It's not her usual behavior at all. Asu's mother smiles and says, "You'll get used to it." Li Yan puts down his chopsticks and replies humbly, "I feel bad for always eating your food for free." Asu's mother, her entire being emanating a strange, otherworldly aura, replies courteously, "Neighbors shouldn't stand on ceremony." She reaches out and pats Asu's head, saying, "Asu is still young, and it's a dangerous world out there. I am always worried something might happen to her. I'm old, and she's my only daughter. If something were to happen to Asu, I wouldn't be able to rest in peace. Don't you agree?" Li Yan nods, his face betraying no particular emotion, and says, "I understand. It's getting late. Thank you for the delicious meal. Good night, Auntie. You and Asu should get some rest. You'll be heading home now." Good night. Ah Su walks Li Yan to the door. She smiles and says, good night. Although this child is still naive. It's that very innocence. That often keeps Li Yan from suspecting anything. Now, remembering her odd behavior, he finally understands. But he keeps these thoughts buried deep inside. At the moment, Li Yan just smiles and waves goodbye to Ah Su. As usual. Ah Su's door closes. And Li Yan turns to head back to his own home. As he steps inside, he takes out his phone, calls Red Ghost, and says, Brother Red Ghost, are there any vacant rooms in the funding building? I want to move in, of course. Red Ghost catches on quickly. Li Yan doesn't say anything else and hangs up. A long silence follows. The air grows heavy. Li Yan mutters the words demons and ghosts under his breath. His entire body seems to be covered in a layer of icy coldness. His red pupils glow in the darkness. He feels a sense of unease deep within him. But now that things have come to this, he's made up his mind. At apartment 411. Li Yan's next-door neighbor's apartment. The stench of salted fish is still strong. Swarms of flies still buzz around. As if something unclean lingers there. Impossible to get rid of. But for now, he has to take care of his own business. Li Yan takes out the 2 pieces of map he obtained from Zhang Mingan and examines them. That voice speaks again. You have obtained a piece of the ancient novel collection. You have obtained a piece depicting the 9-headed bird. The air around Li Yan suddenly changes. A faint light emanates from the page before him. He stares at the image. On the page, along with the note, the 9-headed bird, flying by day and hiding by night, is a demon god. Wearing feather clothes, it transforms into a flying bird. This bird, which has no offspring, likes to capture human children and raise them. Nowadays, people don't hang children's clothes outside at night. If they do, the 9-headed bird will mark the clothes with its blood and take the child away. That's why people call it the demon bird. On the piece of paper, there is a drawing of a woman, spreading 6 wings behind her. She wears an elegant outfit. Additionally, the Hell's Talisman system helps Li Yan see the type, quality, explanation, and nodes. Every encounter in this world is not a coincidence. I think you know what you should do. The paper feels slightly warm. Li Yan reaches into his inner pocket. He still has 3 other pieces of the ancient novel collection. One is the kneeling ox. After the 9-headed bird devours this, it can receive a stronger inheritance or other rewards during the settlement. The other 2 pieces are similar. The voice asks, devour. Li Yan answers without hesitation, yes. The golden slip in Li Yan's hand bursts into flames, emitting a faint golden glow. Although he can see the light radiating outwards, it doesn't feel hot at all. From the golden slip, Li Yan even faintly hears a sound, almost like a faint sigh. He's a little dazed, unsure if there really are gods and demons in this world. The golden slip glows for a moment. Then its edges seem to be gilded. A flame surges forth, consuming it. That voice speaks again. The 9-headed bird has devoured the remnants of the kneeling ox's soul. From the Ochi Guang clan, you will receive a stronger inheritance or other rewards during the settlement. The dazzling scene vanishes. Without a trace, as if it never happened. Only Li Yan remains in the room, smoking a cigarette. Surrounded by 4 cold, old walls. If you look closely, you can see wisps of black smoke fading from the walls, as if the shadows of those things are gradually disappearing. Li Yan sits in silence. He's already smoked half a pack of cigarettes. Are there really gods and demons in this world? Li Yan has no idea. But even if there are, he wasn't the one who disturbed them. The stench that usually permeates the alleyway is growing stronger every day. Flies buzz around the room. Now, Li Yan finally confirms something. The smell he's been noticing these past few days isn't the smell of salted fish. It's the smell of corpses. And those corpses are coming from Ah Su's house. Li Yan frowns and takes a long drag of his cigarette. His mood is heavy. A mix of complex emotions that he can't release. He's lived for so long. But only after interacting with Ah Su and her mother. Did he learn to differentiate between the smell of salted fish and the smell of death? In Li Yan's mind, the image of the innocent girl holding her little cat and smiling brightly appears. That's why he never imagined that beneath her innocent exterior, there were countless skeletal hands reaching out. Li Yan stubs out his almost finished cigarette in the ashtray. He leans back. Exhaustion enveloping his body. Li Yan covers his eyes with his large hand. allowing the warmth and darkness to envelop him. He's sorry, but she's already gone. He, on the other hand, must live. Night falls on Longqing camp. As always, the bright lights illuminate the area. Li Yan stands in a luxurious room. But he has no intention of turning on the lights. He's only here for one reason. To borrow Uncle Yu's Han sword. He picks up the sword and draws it. The blade is still sharp. Radiating a fierce aura, like a roaring dragon. The 8 characters engraved on the sword further enhance the sword's power. Suddenly, the lights in the room turn on. He doesn't know when. Uncle Yu entered the room. She leans against the wooden wall, looking at Li Yan with a cold gaze. You're taking my sword this late at night? Although it seemed like she was interrogating him. From Yushu's tone, she wasn't really angry. Just a little annoyed. She stared at Li DM. But he didn't seem flustered or rushed at all. He looked calmly at Yushu and said, Tai Sui, I have some personal business to take care of. It has nothing to do with the arena. Yushu didn't press him on the matter. Instead, she walked towards Li DM. And asked, so what's going on with you and Judy? Why did she suddenly bring that up? Li DM turned his head away. The calm demeanor he had displayed earlier completely gone. He even seemed a little evasive, unwilling to elaborate. Yushu sighed and sat down on the sofa. When women get into bed, they easily lose sight of right and wrong. You had to give in. Oh. Why is your face so grim? Li Dian was startled and adjusted his expression. But his smile was still a little forced. No, I'm not, he said. Yushu didn't really care. Anyway, managing an arena is no easy feat. You understand. You didn't lose anything by putting on this act, right? Offending a major sponsor like that wouldn't benefit anyone. Li Dian knew that, of course. But from the way Yushu was talking, it seemed like she actually thought he was a gigolo. Right? He hadn't even really started this line of work. And yet there were already so many rumors. He looked at Yushu with a strange, curious expression. Yushu brushed it off. Don't look at me like that. Tell me what's going on so we can. Li Dian chuckled, his voice a little rushed and helpless. It's not just because of Ah-Tu and her mother. But also some other issues I can't explain. He grinned and said, Tai Sui. They say the strongest person in Nine Dragon City isn't Red Devil, but you. Why don't we put on some protective gear and spar a little? Yushu chuckled, her eyes lighting up. After all, sparring with someone skilled was always fun. There was no reason to refuse. So, in just a few moments, they had found 2 sets of protective gear to put on. Li DM held his Han sword and introduced himself. He Zhang, Li DM. Yushu also drew a different sword and introduced herself. 8 trigrams, Yushu. Li DM was the first to attack. He suddenly dashed towards Yushu. He held his Han sword and moved with surprising agility, slashing through the air in a series of Z-shaped movements. Facing his attacks, Yushu was equally skilled. She bent her knees, planting her heels firmly on the ground for leverage. She twisted her waist and swung her sword towards Li DM. The sound of their weapons clashing echoed through the spacious room. Meanwhile, at a luxurious villa, Judy sat in the living room, wearing a white nightgown. She sat on the sofa and muttered, I won't let him get away with this. I won't. Suddenly, Judy's bodyguard walked over, holding a phone. Miss, your phone. Although she was annoyed, she still answered the phone. As soon as she picked up, Judy's tone changed, becoming that of a capable and wealthy businesswoman. Hello, this is she. Hello, Mr. Charlie. Is something urgent? It's rather late. The person on the other end quickly explained the situation. Judy frowned and hung up the phone. Then she poured herself another glass of wine and drank it all. Her bodyguard asked curiously, Miss Han, what's wrong? Judy frowned and said, some ancient books are missing from the recovered stolen artifacts. Ancient books that Master Zhang from China collected. Now, people are offering a high price to find this ancient book. Coincidentally, I once saw him carrying it on his person when he was changing. Judy was talking about Lee Diam. It seemed like things weren't looking good this time. However, the bodyguard caught something else in her words. She knew that Judy was talking about Lee Diameter, so she couldn't help but ask with a smile. Miss, did you see him changing, or was it the other way around? Judy blushed and asked. What kind of question is that? She couldn't help but recall the image of herself with that man. It was incredibly thrilling. He was captivating from head to toe, making her unintentionally fall for him. June 30th, Binyan year, suitable for burial. Make a coffin. After warming up with Yusu, Lee Diam took her Han sword and returned to his old house. He stood at the entrance of the alley, looking into its deep, endless darkness. Pitch black. He walked towards Atu's house. Each step heavy and deliberate. He stopped in front of the house. The horrible stench was getting stronger. Lee Diam reached for the door. A strange feeling stirring within him. The Thunderbird shard in his body was getting hotter. Lee Diam frowned and looked calmly at the door. Could this be a desire? A desire that was growing stronger? Lee Diam pushed the door open. It creaked slowly. The old, rusty sound seemed to echo eerily. Lee Diam frowned. His senses were on high alert. The door wasn't even locked. He stepped inside, his Han sword in hand. His shadow stretched long on the cold floor. It was still dark inside, except for the faint light emanating from a room. Deep inside, Lee Diam's pupils constricted. He instinctively took a few steps back. Strange marks covered the walls, like splatters of blood. Large, dark splatters. They must have been recent, because Lee Diam hadn't seen them when he had dinner with Atu's family. The atmosphere was chilling, sending shivers down his spine. Lee Diam scanned the room. Atu's mother, looking like a demon, was sitting in a chair next to a floral patterned table. Faint light from outside filtered through the window and fell on her. Lee Diam turned abruptly and looked at the woman. Atu's mother sat motionless, her arms hanging limply, her face obscured by the shadows. The faint light from outside fell on the floor, casting long shadows. The scene was eerie and unsettling. Lee Diam's eyes were sharp as a hawk. As he slowly approached Atu's mother, he tightened his grip on his Han sword. But a smile still played on his lips. He looked at the woman and asked, Ma'am, it's late. Why aren't you asleep? Atu's mother remained motionless, her head bowed, not responding. Lee Diam called out cautiously, Ma'am? She still didn't respond. Lee Diam gritted his teeth, bearing the stench emanating from her. As he leaned closer, he tilted his head, trying to get a better look at her face. What he saw was so horrifying that his heart skipped a beat. Her face was covered in patches of black, her skin almost decomposing in some places. Her eyes were sunken, and she showed no signs of life. Flies buzzed around her. Lee Diam frowned and instinctively held his breath. If this wasn't dealt with soon, it would definitely be harmful. Not to him, but to that child. Atu's mother, who had been sitting still, suddenly lifted her head, her eyes bloodshot. Her mouth opened slightly, as if in a smile. She stared at Lee Diam. Atu's mother lunged at him, her hand cupped like a claw. Lee Diam was startled and quickly jumped back. He raised his Han sword, then drew it, slashing through the air. Silver light flashed. It was as if the sword could sense the demon. It sliced through Atu's mother's arm. Black blood splattered. Her arm flew off, black blood dripping from the wound. A strange, bloody aura emanated from the sword. Blood dripped from the blade, but it looked strange. It was unlike any blood he had ever seen. It was as if it belonged to some dark, evil creature. Lee Diam twisted his wrist, pointing the blade at Atu's mother's neck, ready to take her head. But the small, emaciated figure managed to react in time. Atu's mother leaned back, then leapt into the air, dodging Lee Diam's thrust. The Han sword only grazed her neck, leaving a trail of thick, black blood on the blade. Atu's mother landed on the ground, one hand slamming against the floor. The sound of flesh scraping against concrete echoed as she landed on all fours. Atu's mother crawled across the floor, scuttling backward. She twisted her waist, then kicked the door open with both feet. Black blood dripped from her severed arm, staining the floor. The air grew colder and more eerie. Lee Diam held the Han sword, now stained with the creature's blood, and turned to look at the woman crawling on the floor. There were no words to describe Atu's mother now. The once beautiful woman was now more monstrous than any demon. Her bones seemed to be contorted at unnatural angles. Her body twisted below the waist. Her lower body was bent backward. Her limbs lifted off the ground by the strength of her hands and feet. Her eyes were blood red. Her long nails scraped against the floor, making a grating sound. Lee Diam felt a jolt run through his body. He gritted his teeth and stared at Atu's mother. He had never felt so sure that killing this thing was the right decision. Atu's mother lunged at him, her legs scraping against the floor. Every movement was accompanied by a grating sound. Lee Diam narrowed his eyes, his gaze sharp and cold as he stared at the creature. He leaned forward, his Han sword in hand, calmly waiting for the right moment to strike. This creature was unlike any monster he had ever seen. It leapt, its claw reaching for him, its mouth wide open, a foul stench emanating from it. Its shirt was stained with blood, and blood poured from its severed arm. But at that moment, Lee Diam dropped his Han sword. He kicked it towards Atu's mother. The Han sword plunged into her stomach. Lee Diam immediately leapt forward, stomping on the hilt of the sword, driving it deeper into the creature's body. Only the hilt was visible. Black blood splattered everywhere. Atu's mother, impaled by the Han sword, bled profusely. The pain only seemed to make the creature more frenzied. They struggled for a moment. And in a moment of carelessness, the creature managed to strike Lee Diam. The scabbard of his Han sword clattered to the floor. Lee Diam felt a sharp pain in his eye. Blood trickled down, obscuring his vision. Lee Diam winced and forced his eye open. His right eye was almost completely stained red with blood. But the monster was gone. All that remained was a pool of blood by the doorway. Furniture was overturned. The creature had vanished. Lee Diam thought for a moment. Maybe it was attacking from behind. He twisted his waist, planting his feet firmly on the ground. He swung his left arm, delivering a powerful punch behind him. But all he hid was air. Fortunately, he hadn't been caught off guard. Lee Diam breathed a sigh of relief and scanned the room again. There was nothing that resembled a living being. Lee Diam looked around cautiously. "Atu, are you home?" he called out. At that moment, a thin, bony hand suddenly appeared, clutching a sharp knife. Lee Diam, caught off guard, was stabbed. Blood splattered, staining his jacket. Behind him, Atu's mother's thin, emaciated figure appeared like a phantom. The dark shadow darted forward. Lee Diam sensed something sharp piercing his waist. He quickly reached out, trying to grab whatever was behind him. But his hand grasped at empty air. The creature had vanished again. Lee Diam looked around cautiously, but there was no sign of her. This thing was incredibly difficult to deal with. Blood trickled down from his waist. If he left the knife in, it would be difficult to move. Lee Diam gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead. He gripped the hilt of the knife, then quickly pulled it out. Blood gushed out, staining the floor. But Lee Diam didn't cry out. He forced a smile. He. "Ma'am, you're hotter than I am." He was still able to laugh at a time like this. His eyes were cold. He muttered, "If I die like this, I'll be worse than you." As he spoke, Lee Diam scanned the room, his guard up. "So we're going to see each other in hell?" There was no response. Lee Diam's injured eye was starting to feel heavy. He squinted, and then darkness swallowed his vision. The room was silent, as if the monster had left. But Lee Diam knew that it was still here, waiting for an opportunity. If that was the case, he would give it one. He waited, sweat trickling down his nose and into his mouth. He tasted the salty tang of blood, along with the metallic scent.